and my dear participants from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. This is a very auspicious occasion in which two premier bodies, one body from the professionals and another body which is predominantly, uh, I mean, practiced by the academicians. They are together here and we are deliberating it from yesterday, and our All India President, Professor G. Soral, remains instrumental in designing this program. So today is the second day. We have our scheduled speaker, Professor Shyam Sunder from USA, whose subject talk was like this: what is better financial reporting and how do we get there? So financial reporting, as you know, the practitioners or the academicians are very vital for the users. Not only for the users, I mean for the shareholders, but also for those who use financial statements from different objectives. So primarily, these financial statements are of great importance to the shareholders, the investors who look into these, the prospective investors who also look into these. But these figures and information between them, they have to read something more which may not be evident from reading these figures. So when Professor Shyam Sunder has given us this title, what is better financial reporting, it automatically implies that there is some lacuna in the present structure of financial reporting. As we all know, he basically belongs to a country, USA, which still goes with the US GAAP, US generally accepted accounting principles. Whereas the rest of the world, including our country, we are following IAS, International Accounting Standards. For our country, our Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, in very much conformity with the IAS, have developed what is called IND AS. So with all these, we find there have been attempts of harmonization of accounting practices so that the financial reporting can be read properly, can be understood properly, can be interpreted properly, but still they are lacking something. So three issues may be pointed out. First, corporate financial statements necessarily depend on estimates and judgment calls that can widely off the mark, even when they are made in good faith. It is not necessary that all these valuations which the valuers do, which the accountants take into consideration, they are all in a motive to defraud the prospective investors. Yes, we know that a small window dressing we even do at our home for the guests, but it is not totally that much window dressing which is going on because of the extant principles which we need to follow. But it is true that these estimates and this subjectivity in valuation make the thing a little disturbed from what we desire. Second thing is that standard financial metrics intended to enable comparisons between companies may not be the most accurate way to judge the value of any particular company. This is especially the case for innovative firms in the first moving economies, and these are giving rise to unofficial measures that come with their own problems. And finally, managers and executives, they are routinely encountered with strong incentives to deliberately inject error into financial statements. As we know, we call it creative accounting, and whenever this creative accounting comes into practice, the credibility of accounting is lost, and that is reflected in financial statements as well. So in these points, if we look into further details, since our scheduled speaker is not yet available and I have been requested to make a little lengthier observation from what I initially planned. So then we can identify some problems of making the financial statements in these ways, because our objective is always to furnish before the users the better financial reporting. So let me start with, I have already spoken a bit about the standards like US GAAP and IFRS. So let me come to the second issue, which I term as revenue recognition. The revenue recognition is a tricky point. Suppose you sell a smartphone or an internet service or any software package to an individual or to a company. So the contract for that period or service, what we usually understand, this often includes future upgrades whose costs cannot be predicted at the time of the sale. So therefore, it is impossible to determine how much profit the sale will generate. But under the rules of the GAAP, there is no objective way to measure such costs beforehand. If there is no objective way to measure such costs beforehand, a business is not allowed to record any revenue from that sale until all upgrade requirements have been delivered and their costs are known. So we can understand that this would obviously take a few years. So there is a solution now to the companies which are practicing like this, that they are making 2-3 agreements of sale, like one for the original product, the other for the upgradation, like that, so that they can account for the revenues which they have already realized. But this is just, you see, we are just following accounting principles to change our business practice. Our business practice should not depend on accounting principles, but accounting principles becoming so stringent that the company needs to change even its business practice to cope with the accounting principle. Similarly, you can understand there are various such anomalies existing between the GAAP and IFRS. So I can't understand how the USA companies are managing. I would have been a little inquisitive to know it from our today's speaker had he been here, that how the US companies which have so many subsidiaries in other countries, because some of them are well-known transnational corporations, they are managing their accounting, that their parent is following US GAAPs and their subsidiaries are following the respective countries' accounting practices, which are mostly following the IFRS. So there are other problems which we can find out one after another, but I would obviously come to a topic which I like very much, that is fair value accounting. We understand that some 25 years ago, this fair value accounting was not so known among the practitioners or among the accountants. But now we know the need of fair value accounting, and fair value accounting is also applied in valuation of assets, mainly for valuation of assets. It does not take into consideration so much the matter of liabilities. But you see, earlier we used to value the assets at the price that was originally paid. That was termed acquisition cost or historical cost. So therefrom we shifted to fair value. And as soon as we shifted to fair value, now there are various models of calculating fair values. And if you have readily available value in the market for any substitute, for any, for any product, someone please just help me to know whether am I audible from the participants?
Now audible, now audible.
Yes, sir. Okay. Because I got a call from our president, Professor Soral, and there is an announcement from my side that the next session speaker, Dr. Fatima, is available to speak. So just I would like to conclude after a few more comments, because I was speaking on fair value. So you can understand the necessity of fair value, but at the same time you just see the subjectivity again is causing a problem in the fair valuation of assets. And more or less, you know that the US GAAP is again considering only the marketable securities under fair valuation, unlike the IFRSs, which are considering all types of assets for fair valuation. So we don't need creativity in accounting practices, and we don't need creative financial reporting. We need credible financial reporting, and for that, the premier accounting bodies, which comprise of professional bodies and the academicians, predominantly academicians bodies like ours, should come forward and should sit among themselves to devise the methodology by which the better financial reporting can be achieved. So with this, I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to be the first speaker before an audience, which include the All India President, as I have already said, Professor Soral, my good friend, the General Secretary, Professor Bayani, the Senior Vice President, Professor M.L. Badera, Professor Bora, the Junior Vice President, my other two colleagues, Dr. Prakash Sharma, Joint Secretary, and Professor Ashok Agarwal, the Joint Treasurer. So with these, I think I should stop now. Let the speaker take over from here. However, she is the speaker for the second session, who has been arranged by our president because of the connectivity issue which our session speaker for the first session is facing now. We hope
Professor,
that our first.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have in case she was to be introduced by somebody. If somebody is ready with the her introduction, you may request for her introduction first. I am not sure
from
who
the
was
CA Institute or
from our side.
CA Institute side.
From our side.
So that Professor Bayani,
Professor,
I think Professor Ashok Agarwal or
no, maybe Simon sir
will
join. Simon sir.
Simon sir हैं क्या अभी?
Simon sir present now?
नहीं होगा, शायद नहीं ज्वाइन किया.
Okay. So yeah. let me
I
then,
don't
you
speaker.
permit me a few words about Dr. Kaneez then.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Please, you please. Yes.
Yes, yes. All the dignitaries on the dais, the coordinator of the session, Professor Arindam Gupta, the vice presidents, the general secretary, and all honorable persons from CA Institute, Manish Gadiaji, the chairperson of the WIRC of ICI. Dr. Khanis Fatima has come to our rescue. She was scheduled to take session from 6:30, but we are finding it difficult to connect to Professor Shyam Sunder, and she has agreed. So at the outset, I thank her for it. We had her formal introduction, but the next convener is to join a little late. Maybe that we'll find time to give you her real biodata. But briefly telling about her, she is associate professor and head of Department of Accounting in the University of Oman, at Nizwa. And she is an Indian. In fact, she's from Udaipur only. She has been my old student and has brought laurels to my university. She has done very big sized projects in connection with some American universities while remaining in Nizwa. And she is very highly demanded, as a speaker in various parts of the world. Today, she has picked up a very interesting topic, which I think she will only introduce. So with this introduction, brief introduction, Dr. Kaneez is invited, of course, to be coordinated by my friend, Professor Arindam Gupta. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So let us wait for some time because the speaker will be coming very shortly and already announced by our president, sir.
Sir, Professor Arindam, whether she is on the panel, she has just messaged me that she is ready to make a presentation.
Yes, yes.
See whether she is on the panel. Is there any connectivity issue over there?
Problem is that we cannot see all the participants' name.
Yeah, video
Yeah.
is not there.
Only a few names.
But on the panel, she may be there, isn't it?
As of now, the attendees are 169, but I can find only 7-8 names in my panel. So the rest cannot be seen.
Whether those, those 6-7 names, do they have the name of Dr. Kaneez?
Yeah, I'm checking.
No.
No,
She does
not this. Nine
She's not
people
there.
are there. Only 9.
9 are there, na? Kaneez is not there. She is also a panelist for today, na?
No.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. She is making a message to me. 1 minute.
Yes.
I am not joined. They have not allowed me.
Now
Okay.
your voice is came.
Sir, I am muted and I cannot present. I want to speak also, but I am already muted. I asked them to keep my mic open.
Okay.
Now, madam,
Sir,
you are
I am
audible. You are audible. You are audible. Soral sir, madam is audible.
Okay. Yeah, she is sending me a
Yes.
message that she's okay. Ask her to make a presentation then. Yeah.
So, Dr. Fatima, do you hear us? Do you hear me?
She says that she is not being allowed to enter. I mean, Mishra ji, if you are listening to me, can you solve the problem? वो वहां से ट्राई कर रही हैं, वो ज्वाइन नहीं कर पा रही। मिश्रा जी देखिए जरा। She is sending a message. Professor Arindam, you can listen to me, okay?
Yes.
Sorry,
I can
sir,
listen.
I got a call from Kapoor madam. She has joined as an audience. She has to join with the panelist ID sent to her.
Okay. Yeah, let me. वो मैं मिश्रा जी को नंबर दे रहा हूं उनका, वो पैनलिस्ट को क्लिक नहीं किया है, अभी हो जाएगा ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व। ओके,
हाँ, उसको मेल भेजा है, उसमें क्लिक ही करना है।
राइट, मैं उनको मैसेज कर देता हूं।
So until she joins, I have another information to share with the audience. Many of the CA participants may know this, that Ministry of Corporate Affairs of our government, it has issued a fresh notification in this year only on 24th March to amend Schedule 3 of the Companies Act, that is of 2013, to enhance the disclosure required to be made by the company in its financial statements. So primarily these disclosure requirements were classified into three parts: Division 1, Division 2 and Division 3. So Division 1 is very simple. Some rounding off issue was there, rounding of figures. But in Division 2, a large number of information were suggested to be disclosed as notes to the balance sheet. I can give one example to which my research issue is involved, that now promoter shareholding has to be disclosed compulsorily as a note to the balance sheet. Similarly, in Division 3, there are some issues which are to be disclosed as notes to the profit and loss account or revenue statement. Similarly, now like in the case of note to the profit and loss account, the CSR disclosure, again another research topic to which I am a little bit interested. The CSR disclosure was made compulsory to be disclosed as a note to the profit and loss account. So in the earlier sets of notes to the balance sheet, it is a very long list. The disclosure requirements in the notes to the balance sheet is even longer than the notes which have been suggested for profit and loss account. There are some ratios. For the first time, the companies will be made bound to publish these ratios, to calculate these ratios and publish in ratio form, like current ratio, debt equity ratio, debt service coverage ratio, return on equity ratio, inventory turnover ratio. All these ratios we used to find in some very good companies' annual reports. They were publishing them voluntarily. But now from this financial year, from the current financial year, it is 2021-22, these amendments will be coming effective. So this information I would have very loved to share with the audience. The CA participants, they already may be updated with these amendments. So these comments I was to add with my earlier presentation. So now I hope the speaker is able to join and continue her deliberation.
Professor Arindam, I am audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah. In fact, and participants may also be listening to me now. So the stage at the moment is that we have made a connection between Dr. Fatima and the concerned person, And because she says that the link which she has received is muted, I believe the problem may now be solved, because both have now each other's phone number and they are connected with each other. So hopefully
Yes.
this may work. And meanwhile, let me take few minutes with the permission of session coordinator to talk to the audience. At the outset, I seek apologies for this technical glitch. Despite of the very hard work by the technical team and all our precautions that we have taken, we discussed it over yesterday evening, morning also. Our General Secretary, Professor Bhayani, was also active. The chairperson of WIRC of ICAI, CA Manish Gadiaji, was very active, but somehow it happened. In any case, whatever inconvenience has been caused to the audience, we definitely apologize for that. And we hope that still we will be able to amend the things. And we are trying to connect to Professor Shyam Sunder also. Maybe Professor Kaneez takes it first, and in case Professor Shyam Sunder is available, we hope that we are still hopeful. Friends, I just wanted to utilize this time in telling you, few things regarding the Indian Accounting Association. Of course, large number of you, the audience, are our members, honorable members, and many chartered accountant friends are here. Yesterday also, most of you were joining, and you might have listened to the discussion between we people and the chartered accountant friends in particular, where what emerged was that let us go ahead for doing now collaborative researches with professionals and the academicians together. Professor Arindam, was deliberating very useful things just before, talking to you about certain amendments in the rules and the fair valuation, etc. And those things, we hope that if the two sides, those who are fully in practice and those of us who are in academics, if we join hands with the joint projects, perhaps the research in accounting in the country may really develop. And I'm happy to share with you that some senior council members of ICAI were present yesterday, and they welcomed this thought. I would also like to share with you one information which perhaps might not have reached to all of you, that last year itself, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has offered, grants for research projects, basically to the academicians only. Of course, there is no restriction on that. And those who are members of IAA, we have circulated it through, our website and our all WhatsApp groups to members. Many of our members, to my knowledge, have applied for those projects. And in any case, it is appearing on the Institute of Chartered Accountants website. So that way it was very widely circulated and many of you might have applied. But maybe that this might have escaped attention of some of you. So to them, I would like to say that now the Institute has come up to support financially the research projects, wherein all academic persons can also apply, and there may be a joint projects between CA Institute people and the Indian Accounting Association people. So this information, I'm trying to use this time to give you this information in case you are missing on that. Because the advantage of this particular offer from the ICAI is that now professionals are ready to spare their time and join hands with us. As the academicians who are listening to me are aware that one issue, particularly pertinent issue with the we academicians here in accounting for doing research, despite of all sincerity, commitment and methodological command that we have, since our subjects, accounting, auditing, taxation, etc., are all applied, this is very essential that we also have a full input from the practice side. And therefore, I really look forward to these combinations, and that may really help. The message is there, video paused. Professor Arindam, am I audible still?
Yes,
Hello?
you are very much audible.
Yeah,
You are very much audible.
Okay, I'm carrying on because anytime anything may happen, so kindly tell me in case there is a problem. Friends, there is one more point which I think I may utilize this time in sharing with you. You must have seen our website or through WhatsApp groups, you must have been in touch with that Indian Accounting Association, with the cooperation of all the members here and all the practicing chartered accountant friends, has taken an initiative which should be lovable to all those who love the subject of accounting, that we try to work on in a very marathon way on the model curriculum on accounting. We started this last year somewhere in July, and then all of our executive approvals have been taken on this. And this committee continuously worked for about 10-11 months in a big way. And by now we are ready with the curriculum. You must have noticed that we circulated the exposure draft of the curriculum about 2 months before, to which we received tremendous response from all over the country, including academicians and professionals. And after that, again, the committee was sitting and they had multiple rounds of discussion. And finally, we reached the model curriculum. I would also like to share with you that me and the chairperson of WIRC of ICI, Manish Gadiaji, since we were the two main organizers of this joint webinar, we were thinking that can we, have some time to inaugurate this webinar from Honorable Education Minister Nishank Sahab. Manish was agreed to that, and a joint letter was sent to Honorable Minister Sir to spare some time online to inaugurate this webinar. And at that time we were very hopeful. We made request, and we wanted that he would be saying something about the model curriculum in the webinar, but we were very unfortunate, and that way in a way the country was little unfortunate, that Honorable Minister got again the infection of COVID and he was hospitalized. You must have read in the newspapers. And finally we received a denial from his side because unfortunately, as newspapers informed, that he had to be again hospitalized in AIMS for post-COVID symptoms. I wish him well. I do not know his health conditions right now, but I wish him well, and his early recovery is very important for the nation. So we were just planning that we could have released that model curriculum, and maybe what I am putting before you is that within a short span of time, we may come up with the model curriculum to be released and put before the entire country. The specific features of that curriculum is that it is in consonance with the national education policy and all the guidelines which the policy is giving to us in terms of having the vocationalization, the flexibility, the multiple exit entry systems, the 4-year research degree, and the international level of the content, etc. One specific feature of that curriculum, which one day I was sharing with the CA Manish Gadiaji, and he being a senior chartered accountant and heading an important body of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, he was very happy to listen to me. That I would like to share before all of you here. Because when I mentioned to him that in that model curriculum, IEA is going to put before the country a Bachelor of Accounting and a Master of Accounting curriculum. Basically, two core graduation and post-graduation curriculum with a distinct accounting discipline, absolutely devoted to accounting, auditing, taxation, cost management, accounting, etc., the related subjects. Because as you know, friends, worldwide in all prominent countries, this is the practice that accounting has been recognized as a separate special discipline. So I hope that once that we put it for consideration of all of you, the entire nation, we in IAA would really be satisfied making a bit of service to the nation, service to the subject of accounting. Now at this stage, can we check again with Mishra ji, what's the development?
Hello, Kaneez ma'am.
Mishra ji, क्या status है?
2 मिनट सर. Kaneez ma'am, आपका mic on करेंगे?
Now Dr. Fatima has joined. Dr. Fatima can be found as a panelist also.
Okay, yeah. I over to Professor Arindam for carrying it further. Professor Arindam, please. Okay.
Yes. So thank you, Professor Soral, for giving a very yes, Dr. Fatima, I am calling you in a 2 or 3 minutes.
Gupta sir, 2 seconds रुकेंगे. Kaneez ma'am.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, Dr. Fatima is audible. Yes, Dr. Fatima is very audible now. So we thank you, Professor Soral sir, for giving the description of the efforts Indian Accounting Association has developed over the past 1 year. So now, without any further wastage of time, I would request our session speaker, Dr. Khanis Fatima Sadriwala, to present our deliberation here. Dr. Fatima, please. You are muted, Dr. Fatima. Yes, now you can speak.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon to all, one and all. A very warm wishes from here, Sultanate of Oman, to all of you. And I do not know why this hassle has become, but it's all right. There are difficulties and things do pop up all of a sudden, but it is for us how to manage it. And since India is one among the most tolerable societies, and today we are going to touch upon the culture only, and this is why we can bear things, and even though there are a lot of difficulties, but we are able to solve all these problems. Anyway, I want to present the slides, but
हेलो
yeah.
हेलो मैम आपका स्क्रीन शेयर करिए मैम आपको स्क्रीन शेयर का ऑप्शन दे दिया मैम
But from mobile I can't share the screen.
नहीं मैम आपसे कंटिन्यू बोलिए मैम आपका मेल पीपीटी आपका मेल में नहीं आया मैम मुझे मैं आपको व्हाट्सएप कर देता हूँ मैम आप कंटिन्यू बोलिए इसको स्टॉप कर दीजिए मैं यहाँ से कट कर देता हूँ
What should I do? I should stop the whole thing?
मैम आप कंटिन्यू बोलिए आपका मैं यहाँ से पीपीटी शेयर कर दे रहा हूँ मैम
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Fatima, you can speak. So just for the audience, let me tell the audience that her deliberation issue will be cultural impact on accounting. She will speak on cultural impact on accounting. Professor Simon, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Professor Arinam, can you hear me?
कनीज मैम आपका ऑडियो
Yes, sir. I have called you.
हाँ मैम बोलिए
I have called you so many times.
Hello. Am I audible
Yes,
to you?
Dr. Fatima. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
madam, you are audible.
Okay. So probably Mr. Jay Mishra would be sharing the slides with you. Meanwhile, we can just begin with what I want to, the message that I want to convey to all of you, that when we talk about, say, accounting, we never touch upon, say, culture. So, and this is today's topic that I'm going to deal with, and that is cultural impact on accounting. Though we know that statutory elements are too much in accounting, so definitely you have to follow the rules and regulations and the standards. But is there some place for culture, or does culture play any role in shaping the accounting? That is what we are going to discuss today. So my presentation begins with what is culture, and along with that I would be focusing on the Hofstede's cultural dimensions, Hofstede was actually a psychologist, and he studied, he was working with IBM, and
You are muted. Dr. Fatima, you please unmute. Dr. Fatima, please unmute. Yes, now again, yes, now it is okay. You can speak now.
okay, so all what I spoke, you couldn't hear me, isn't it?
Yes, you just were introducing culture and all that.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody out there. Greetings from Sultanate of Oman. And I am talking about the impact of culture on accounting. So the impact of culture on accounting is very heavy, though we may not realize it. We may not be aware of it. So today we are going to touch upon those dimensions. And the first thing, how the progress of today's lecture is going to be is like I shall begin with what is culture, and we will see what are the different norms and beliefs and what are the attitudes of people and how it impacts the working. Then we will move on to Hofstede's cultural dimensions, and then I will touch upon Gray's accounting dimensions, and then we will see the combined effect of Hofstede's cultural dimension on accounting dimensions. And this combined effect, we can touch upon the various cultures of some of the chosen countries. The chosen countries probably maybe some from the east, some from the west, from the Middle East, and then we will try to sum up that how far culture plays a role in accounting. I hope I am audible, though I may not be visible because the video is paused. Isn't it? Hello?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Is there any way to come online with video and with the presentation?
That Mr. Mishra can say.
मैम अभी तक आपका मेल नहीं आया मैम कहीं से आपका मेल नहीं आया अभी तक
No, I have sent you mail.
मैडम मेल नहीं आया अभी तक आपका
Jay Mishra, 4 minutes now it has reached you. Resend? Should I resend?
मैम रिटर्न करिए मैम
Mr. Mishra, please see your spam folder.
हाँ मैम चेक करो हाँ सर चेक करो
Because probably the font might also be different. I am sending from a MacBook, and I do not know, and I also want connectivity to the web link. Will it be possible or not? I just don't know.
Mr. Mishra, do you hear what madam has told?
सर अभी तक मेल आया नहीं सर चेक करो मेल
Yeah, I have sent twice. I sent. Because most of my presentation is like, you will have to look at the slides. I mean, I have put some photographs, some graphs, some. So on that basis only you would be able to understand what I am trying to speak.
Madam, again I have sent you the email ID. Just check you have sent on same email ID in the chat box.
Send me another email. Okay, I'll send you on the one that you have already sent me.
Yeah.
Arindam sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes,
Because
yes.
I am also using the Zugaad technology. My
No, I
audio
can
is
hear
on the
you.
laptop and audio is on the tab and video is on the laptop.
And I have called you so
How are
many
you, sir?
times in the beginning. I
No,
called
that
Can
you
I?
time I am not
a
able
number
to
of
hear,
times
sir.
in the beginning.
I
Hello.
can.
Okay,
You called.
okay.
I just seeing your lip.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Can I send you mail on customercare.gotowebinar.com? Because I received a
No, that is
participation
not
mail
there.
from there only.
Not on that, not on that, madam.
Okay.
I'm sending one more email ID to just try on that.
Okay, send.
Ma'am, just send.
Professor Bhayani ji,
Yes,
please suggest what to do.
because
Now
this is the
speaker.
technical issue and this is new platform for everyone, so that might be creates the problem. And another thing, by mobile, it's not work video. That I have informed to you, but
Vaniji.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Vaniji.
Yeah.
कैसे हैं आप? एक्चुअली प्रॉब्लम ही हो रही है, पहले कभी वीडियो होता तो ऑडियो नहीं चल रहा था, मैं भी सुन नहीं पा रहा था किसी को भी।
लेकिन ये फॉरेन के लोग क्या है, वो थोड़ा डेलिकेट होते हैं, वो एक्सेप्ट नहीं करते, वो नहीं करते नया डाउनलोड, इसलिए ये थोड़ा इश्यू चलता है। श्याम सुंदर साहब के साथ यही है, ब्राउजर से भी ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं, लेकिन मॉर्निंग में नोबडी इज एबल टू हेल्प हिम। दिस इज मॉर्निंग 7:15 समथिंग, so who can help them, because might be is not much more convenient with the technology, so that is the some issues. Now it's work. Yeah, presentation is good.
Now it can be seen. Yes.
Hello, Kaneez ma'am.
Yeah, hello, I am there.
मैं PPT शेयर किया आपका.
Yeah. Oh my God, the fonts are all distorted. No problem. At least it is available. Does not matter. We can move ahead. No problem. It's okay, yeah.
Non-desk. Madam, on desktop, fonts is clear. On desktop, no issue.
Okay, then it's okay. It's okay.
No issue on the desktop present. Yeah.
If I open on my laptop, it's okay.
Yes, we can see clearly. You can proceed.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so a very warm welcome to all of you. Though because of all this hassle, we were a little delayed on the part of presentation. Anyway, is not a big difficulty. So my flow of today's presentation goes like what is culture, and that would be the main focus for our study today. I mean the presentation today. And then we will touch upon Hofstede's cultural dimensions, Gray's accounting dimensions. Then we would have a look on what is the combined effect of both. And then we'll go upon touching of some of the countries, how they behave, what is the culture there, and how it impacts the accounting there. Can you please move on to the next slide, please? So the basic working, also your cursor, you can put it somewhere on the side. Yeah. So while we talk about the learning objectives of this particular part of the culture, we are going to discuss about what is culture. So basically culture may be divided into two major parts, material culture and non-material culture. So the material culture is like all the societies, non-material culture is like the values, the beliefs, symbols, the language, whatever defines the society. And the material culture is all about physical objects, like the tools and technology, like clothing, housing, eating. Actually, it involves even your travel and even your postings on Facebook and WhatsApp communication, and all these are material culture. So whenever we are putting something on Facebook and beautiful photographs of different places, what you are actually trying to show. So that is also part of your material culture. If we move on to the next slide, we will see that the first part, that is the symbols. So if you look at these symbols, there are symbols for, I mean, the way of communication can also be symbol. For example, we do not have, or we cannot communicate directly. Like if I cannot speak to you, but I can always use the symbol. So this symbolic language, it may be used for direction, or it may for weather, or for tracks. And nowadays we are having so many new symbols, new culture is there. So we know the WhatsApp symbol and the Facebook icon, and even the young small children in our family hand over the mobile to them, and they will be able, even they are not able to speak. Under children under 2 years old, they are able to click on some buttons, and whatever video is of their choice, they are able to open it. So you see, symbols also play a very important role in like a communication. Okay, so when we talk about culture, symbol is also a part of culture. Then next, if we talk about, next slide, we talk about gestures. So when you are communicating to somebody, we use many kind of gestures. So the hand gesture, you can, if you do not know the place, or if you show somebody written words in, for example, I landed up in China, and I didn't know how to speak, I didn't know their language, I didn't know about anything. I just picked up one paper that I had printed, and I showed them to somebody out there. And what they did was, actually they gave me a direction. Go to the right and go to the left, and just a symbol they put forward. So when they are putting symbols, we can understand a lot of things. So symbol is also this gesture is also a part of our culture. Okay, let us move ahead, and we will connect all these things with the accounting, how these are shaping our behavior. Okay, so the first thing that we are discussing here is how these symbols, the gestures, they are shaping our behavior. And from the behavior, we'll move on how they are putting an impact on our business and finally on accounting. So next slide, you would see an astonishing figure about language. You see, the most important set of symbol is language. And when we talk about accounting, accounting is the language of business. And in such a situation, we must use the language in the benefit of the society. Now let us see. Perhaps you can here see out that in the purple color, if you can see, 39.2% are the languages which do not have any script. That means that there are languages which are just verbal. We are only speaking, but there is no script for it. And the amazing figure about pictures, there are languages which are written in form of pictures. Pictorial language, like talk about old Chinese, it is just some of the symbols that they are showing. If you are living near a river and there is a tree, they will put a crooked line and then they will draw a tree and say this fellow lives near the river, near the creek, and nearby there is a tree also. So this was the language of, even today, if you go back, Google is at a click of a button and you can just explore and you can see that how the language is written. So it is a pictorial language. What we are actually using today is just the 23.7%. And out of that, these are 23% is the written languages. And out of that, how much would you give? What percentage would English form to it? Would Hindi form to it? Which Arabic form to it? There are many, many languages which are part of this 23% only. Okay. Let us see the next slide. Nowadays, what we are, this is the culture, no? So whenever we say about a businessman, a fireman, what comes to your mind? It is a man who is doing it. A woman will never come into picture when we talk about a firefighter, isn't it? So what we need to do is now to be aware of it, that what our language is teaching us, how and in which direction we are going. So culture is shaping our behavior. See the alternative words. Instead of using a businessman, we can use the word business person or executive. Instead of a fireman, we can use the word firefighter. Why women can't be included? The better half of the whole world has been ignored because of these words. But no, it comes into behavior. It is not only the words, but it is the actual behavior that yes, they have been ignored for so many decades, for so many years, from whenever the mankind came into working, whenever the world took shape, we have always neglected them. So now when we are aware, now when our behavior, we have to change our behavior. How can you change our behavior? So first thing what we have to do is we have to change our language. Now these languages, these culture, these beliefs, the people who are using chairperson or police officer, or they are using instead of man-made, they are using the words artificial or synthetic, or they are using double, he or she. That means inclusive. They are including it. So same thing reflects on our business, it reflects on accounting. Whether you are inclusive or you are excluding some of the item. How are you disclosing your facts? So disclosure is one of the most important item of our notes. And if you are ignoring here, that means there is definitely some part of your notes that you are ignoring. This is how the whole link follows. So when we say a professor should be devoted to his students, so a professor can be a woman. The students can be girl students also, the females also. Similarly, let us go to the next slide where we talk about norms. The cultures differ widely in their norms or standards and the expectation of behavior. How do you expect them to behave? Some things that which may be very normal for you may be abnormal for others. For example, when you talk about Oman, even on the beaches and swimming pools, you will find people with full dress on. They do not prefer wearing costumes. And Similarly, when you talk about formal norms, we have traffic laws, we have criminal codes, we have, and in the when you refer to the colleges, the students are also given some behavioral codes. They cannot address things like cheating, or they cannot use abusive language or hate speeches. So these are the formal norms. But when you talk about informal norms, they are some of the customs that we are following. Like how you greet. In the Arab culture here, usually greeting is by touching the nose and by touching the forehead. But what happens in the pandemic times? From far away, we will say, just wave our hand and say, hello, do not come closer, please. If you are very close to me, do not come closer. Isn't it? So the table manners, the greeting, they are such everyday behaviors which show how sometimes, these are some of the norms of the society. Now, how do you behave with your superiors? How do you behave with your subordinates? Do you say hello to the watchman who opens door for you every day? And how do we ride in an elevator? Now, in elevator, earlier, even in malls and places where you will see the culture in Japan and Korea that people stand on the left side only. They leave the right hand side for the people who are in hurry, who want to go ahead faster, like that. So, another part of our culture is rituals. Rituals are actually the established procedures. Please move on to the next slide. Rituals are the established procedures and ceremonies. Actually, why we are doing ritual is we want to make a transition of whatever we are, however we are transforming all our behaviors to the next generation. And how do we transform? So there are rituals which tell us how to transform these behaviors. So this is why whenever there is a housewarming or whenever there is a new child in the family, then we call people, we do whatever, tika, bati, I do not know, these all these things. You are doing all the rituals. Why you are doing it? Because you are transforming something from one generation to another generation. So is it in the case of accounting also? Yes. Whatever, whoever used to be your Munim, the son of Munim takes over all the documents and everything from your company. And the accounting behavior, like son of a doctor father, the son tends to become a doctor. Similarly, for accounting, a chartered accountant father will always want his or her child to be a chartered accountant. So sometimes when we talk about graduation ceremonies also, they are also part of our rituals. But the norms and beliefs are changing. So let us go to the next slide to see that how these norms are changing. So earlier, women look now during the time of pandemic. What happens? Who lost the jobs first? The men or the women? So women were you considered to be expendable, not the asset of the actual business and not the part of the business. They were, taken up as the part which you can just part with. Okay. So the maximum jobs were lost by the women. They were, supposed to take care of the house and family and children and the male counterpart. And so they were the one who lost their jobs. But having said that, have a look at the percentage of people who agree women should take care of running their homes. See the graph, and from this graph you can identify that the percentage is gradually going down, and drastically it went down from the 70s to 2000. You can see the change is obvious to you. Similarly, in India, the minutes spent by women as unpaid work versus men, you can see the graph, blue and green. So how much is the difference between the other countries? In South Africa, you can see, in China, you can see, in Brazil, you can see the difference between unpaid and paid workers. Let us move on to the next slide, because I want to quickly touch upon culture and then move on to the basic Hofstede's 4 dimensions. Actually there are 6 dimensions, but we will be talking about the major 4. We will go to the calculation of the cultural dimension for various countries also. And the one of the most important element which forms part of culture is values. So values are actually our own judgment, and we say what is good or what is bad, what is desirable or what is undesirable. So when you study the financial statements of a company or annual reports, and you might, when you sit together and say, oh, why they have added here this, they should have added this, and they should have added that. So this is what we believe should have been added. So we are talking about should. So what should be there? But this is actually what is the culture's value. Okay, so when we say accounting values, so accounting values also are part of the overall accounting culture. Yani, we will say what is good to be added and what is not good to be added. So let us talk about, say, Japan. So in Japan, the central value is group harmony. Okay, people like to work in group. Now, if I say people like to work in group, it means it is they have placed great emphasis on harmonious social relationships, and they dislike interpersonal conflict. So if they dislike interpersonal conflict, that means there are very lawsuits that are filed in the courts. And okay, if there are less number of cases filed, then their expenditure on the court cases would be very low. And the same thing would be reflected in their profit and loss account, that their legal costs are low. Isn't it? So the similar company, equivalent company in any other country, and in the country Japan, if you talk about return on investments, definitely Japanese return on investment would be higher, because they are cutting off on the legal costs. Let us see the percentage of people who think competition is is beneficial. So I have taken the data from the World Value Surveys, and here when we see the behavior of individuals, United States thinks that yes, competition should be very high, and they say that it is very positive. And when they say positive, it means that they are talking about competition in the sense that it gives more productivity, and they can work harder, they can focus more. But when you use the same thing for Japan, they do not like competitions. So individualistic behavior is there for Americans, but simultaneously this behavior may or may not be there. It may not be present in other countries. So if we talk about India, what is here? Are we into competition or are we not? I would like to point out here that cultures are not good or not bad. They are just there. Okay. And having said that, we cannot say that the success of any economy depends upon its culture. No, it does not. The culture of any country may be collectivism, maybe group working. The behavior of a country might be like individualistic. It does not mean that if they are individualistic, then the economic development would be higher. Let us see the next slide of work ethics. Here we can see that people who disagree that men have more right to job than women when jobs are scarce, when there are less jobs. Look at the pandemic now. In this scenario, when we see that who are the people, in which country people who disagree that men have more right, disagreement, that means they agree equality. So you can see United States is on the highest percentage. They agree equality. They say that yes, all the people have right to work. They have right to earn. And as you go to the right hand side Jordan, which represents, for example, the Middle Eastern culture. Towards, let us see Japan and Jordan. Here what they say is, they do not agree to it. They say, yes, men have the first right. So their behavior is very conservative. Okay, let us go on to the next one. Now there are artifacts also, which I talked about the culture, non-material and material. So in material culture we can see, and this figure in front of you is something astonishing. And what is that? See, the element of artifact or the material culture, the things that you own. Yani you have a smartphone in your hand, you have devices in front of you, you have a air condition in your house. But when we talk about simple societies, what do they need? The artifacts are largely limited to just a few tools and the hut or a very simple dwelling and the clothing that they wear. Look at the most important invention in the evolution of the society, the wheel. And when a question was asked to people about how are you utilizing the wheel, or if you want to transport goods from one place to another, what is the mode that you are utilizing? And you will be amazed by looking at this graph that 57.5% say that even today they are using human bearers. 30% are using the pack of animals, and just 11.8% are using the wheels. So what is required? With this, if you count on the human labor, or if you count on the behavior, or if you count on the culture of the society, still we are, the non-providers. Why can't we provide a wheel to the workers? Isn't it? How easy and how comfortable it would become. So still we have a very long way to go, and these graphs, these ideas, this gives us an idea that how our society is today. So being aware is the first step of learning. So my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen out there, what I want to focus on is that due to this awareness, today we are learning about our culture. Tomorrow we might change our behavior. So let us see today what is the normal. Next slide, please. The iPhone is just one of the many notable cultural artifacts in today's wireless world. If you are out of technology, you are out of the race from the global competition. And those countries who are out of technology are out of doing global business and out of having good connectivity with the other parts of the world. And this is why we will say that for each and everything, for all the technologies today, for example, we will talk about there is an app for everybody, for everything. So now when we talk about IoT is Internet of Things. So we are also not going with the 4G and 5G. We are going with the Industrial Revolution number 4. IR4 has changed a lot of things in the whole world. So today, after going through all the cultural norms and beliefs and artifacts, this is the major takeaway. What is that? That major elements of culture are symbol, language, norms, values, and artifacts. May you go on to the next slide, please? The languages, what we are using, they make effective social interaction possible, and it influences how people conceive of concepts and objects. Next slide, please. The major values that distinguish states or countries include individualism, competition, and a commitment to work ethics. Because Americans, they believe a lot on work ethics. The same may not be followed by other cultures of other parts of the world. Let us see the next slide. So now, till now we were talking about culture, and let us see now the impact of culture on social institutions like accounting. So whether culture affects the unified global accounting practices, or what is the role of culture in accounting, it will help us to understand the international accounting standards. What we have done actually is we have tried to study the relationship of culture and accounting on the basis of two accounting modes. The group one may be Anglo-American, and the second might be the, let us focus on Euro-continental accounting method. So probably if in two basic or big categories, if you would like to put them, they would be the common code countries and the code law countries, common law and code law. So accounting must respond. This is the accounting is language of business, and so accounting must respond to the society's ever-changing information needs, and the accounting must respond to the cultural diversity, to the economic development, to legal, social, and political conditions, and especially during the time of pandemic, during COVID-19, there are so many things on which we have to rethink. There are inventories lying in your warehouse, and there is no cash available with you. The businesses are suffering. In such a situation, what is your culture? Are you very strict? Are you very masculine? Masculine means a lot of assertiveness is there, or you are, focusing on dominance. Because accounting must respond. Let us go to the next slide. Accounting must respond to its environment. Different cultural, economic, legal, political environments must produce different accounting systems. And we can better understand a nation's accounting by understanding the influence it has on development, how accounting developed. Now, for example, if I talk about sources of finance, so what are the sources of finance that you are using? Are you only depending upon the banks or the financial institutions? Or there are any other modes of finance that you are focusing on? It will clearly demark whether you work on the conventional methods or you are working on the modern methods. So accounting differs all around the world because of culture. And once you have the knowledge about how accounting developed, it helps us to understand how and why things happened in the way they have happened. And we can observe the similarities between the behaviors, we can observe the differences between it, and how and the way, the mode in which you want to do business with them. For example, if I talk about Saudi Arabia, so what kind of a behavior is there? Saudi Arabia, you will see in the further, slides that we follow, and the behavior is very dominant, and they are a collectivism kind of a work culture. So we cannot say it is good or bad. It is there. They are among one of the richest countries in the world. So you cannot compare the economic development with the cultural development. Okay, let us move on to the next slide, please. When you classify these things into various parts, classification actually allows us and gives us information how and why accounting systems differ. We can also analyze whether these systems are converging or diverging, and overall what are the standards the IFRS, what we are looking forward for it. Why have we made standards to be followed by the whole globe? So what you are wanting is actually, we want harmonization, and the goal of classification is to group financial accounting systems according to their distinctive characteristics. Okay, so classification is actually the way of viewing the world. So every nation's accounting standard and practices result from complex interaction of their economy, from their historical background, from their institutional and cultural factors. So diversity among nations is to be expected. And this is only the way, this is the only reason why culture does not allow you to harmonize on a global level. Next slide, please. So we can see that there may be many influencers of the accounting development. It may be sources of finance or the legal system in which you are working. How stringent, how strong is your legal system? What are the taxation policies? In Oman, recently we have introduced VAT, which is initially, now it has been launched on just 16th of April 2021. And now we are gradually implementing it. We are looking onto which businesses have already started working on it, which are going to work on it. So these kind of, the taxation policies of the countries, then political and economic ties, whether there is inflation in the country or not, at what rate inflation is taking place, this economic development and education level, these are of course some of the major factors on which accounting development is based. If there is more education, probably we will say yes, accounting will be more developed. Similarly, if you are having inflation, high inflation countries, probably you might be required to change your accounting system, and there probably more the accounting development would be more. But one which reflects on the culture is one which reflects the most. Let us go to the next slide and see how culture impacts the accounting development. So to sum up, probably I can just, summarize that culture shapes the way in which we think and the way we are doing business and the way we are communicating to people. And the recent, advanced research on language acquisition, the center goes one step ahead and talking about the shared pattern of behavior and interaction among people, and understanding that how this develops an understanding, how socialization is there. Okay. So this is why we will say Western culture. What do you mean by Western culture? And then sometimes we will say Middle Eastern culture. Sometimes we would say Eastern culture. We would say African culture. What are these? Actually, these are seen as the group identity. The way we are working, the way we are behaving. So gradually it takes up a shape, and that shape is actually, it becomes the culture of a country. Okay, so again, I will focus on this point that the cultural behaviors or the way we are working, the way of working of any individual country or state or region, it cannot be said good or bad, but just it is just there. Okay, let us see the next slide. And we will now focus on Hofstede's work, which he has which is affecting the whole world, and it takes us to a new dimension and to a new window opening, that what is the various cultures available in the world. So what he did was, actually he did a big research, because academically, when I talk about whatever I have been talking for so long, how much reliability is there to what I have already spoken. So to have reliability on that, the psychologist Hofstede, he studied on 116,000 IBM employees across 39-40 countries, and he came up with some cultural value dimensions. And you can now position countries into these dimensions. So these social values are, number one, individualism versus collectivism. So there are some countries who would focus on individualism. Individualism means they are trying to work on their own, instead of collectivism, where we say teamwork or working together or taking up a project, and then the whole team would sit and work it. Now let me ask you a question. The first idea, the first thought that comes to your mind, for example, you are given a project. How would you like to complete it? Would you like to work alone, or would you like to work in a group? This is not good or bad, but it is just there. It is our own belief, our own value system, our own way of working. Probably, I would say if I work alone, I can work fast. I can work better. But if I want to work longer, I have to work in a team. So, because of this individualism, more focus, like the countries, when we talk about individualism, in the earlier slides also we have seen that the US focuses more on individualism. And this is why a lot of entrepreneurship activities are there in America. Big giants like Google and your Facebook, your Amazon, they have all popped up there. Mushrooming growth of industries have been there. Why? Because in their culture, taking risk is, they are risk-taking people. And because they are individualistic, they do not have, they do not, ask their parents or the superiors about what they need to do, what they do not need to do. And so they invest into businesses. No problem at all if you fail in your investment. They are taken up as heroes. But what happens in the other culture? For example, here in India or towards the eastern side, when somebody invests into business and when they, for example, fail, what happens? The society itself shames them, and they say, "Oh, who told you to go here? You did not take, opinion from others, and you did not listen to your father, and you did not listen to the friends and relatives." So this kind of a behavior differentiates, this is how we can, see how businesses have popped up in the various parts of the world. The second societal norm, the second cultural value is focusing on the small and large power distance. Now, actually, what is power distance? Power distance is that the junior most member of your company, your society, your culture, your organization, the junior most member, the smallest, the youngest member of your group feels that there is unequal distribution of power. Just have a thought towards it. That being a member of a family, member of a company, member of an organization, if you are on the junior most position, do you have the power, or do you feel there is equality or inequality? If you feel there is inequality, that means the culture of that organization is with a large power distance. That means there is a gap between the superiors and the juniors. That means the power is vested into the hands of a few limited people. And so we will say there is centralization. So all these centralized policies, what we talk about, is because of power distance. Yesterday we were hearing professor speaking about GST in India. Now, when you talk about GST, it is centralized form of indirect tax, consumption tax. It means that it has, again and again narrated to us, and it proves that there is a power distance because it is centralized. Well, anyway, moving on to the low or small power distance, we will say that everybody is treated in a similar manner. In Oman, I would say, here in Sultanate of Oman, there is low power distance in case of organization. Organizational power distance is low. The family power distance is high. Yani when they are in the families, the senior most person in the family is their baba or the father. And the children look upon for him for all decision making. Still, but when you talk about organization, the junior most person in the organization and the senior most person in the organization, they wear similar type of dress. They will greet each other, they will touch their nose, forehead, wish them salam alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. Everything will be same. Religiously also, when we talk about this, they go to pray in the same mosque, they stand in the same line for prayer. There is no up, no down. So these are some of the cultures which we are going to discuss. Furthermore, you will have some more interesting facts related with various countries. Okay, the third cultural dimension is the uncertainty avoidance. How much you are risk averse or you are ready to take risk. The more risk you are able to take, there will be more entrepreneurial spirit in you. The more when we put it, though I have also done a research on it, how your brain works, left brain and right brain working. So what do you feel about it? Do you always follow the time? Are you wearing a watch? Do you take care of the to-do list in your mobile that you have saved? Are you saving everything on your calendar? Are you following everything from time to time? And yes, if you are, that means you are following some strict norms. You are having some fixed, planned behavior in your life. Whereas if you are not keeping on to norms, where you are not regular in your say organization, you do not reach on time, you are late night workers, sometimes you work, sometimes you do not. So this kind of vague behavior, probably it will nowadays when we are talking about this pandemic situation, we are working in a very flexible mode. We are working from home. So are you following your office hours at home also, or you are not following? So this is how we are the culture is changing, the work culture is changing. So if we are changing along with the changing times, and we will say that this focus, like you from the timetabling to becoming flexible, what we are trying to do is that we are moving from the right brain behavior to left brain behavior. Anyway, that is not the point of discussion today. We are focusing only on how the behaviors impact our working, impact accounting, in fact. Now, so uncertainty avoidance rises up because of that. So those people who are not very strict, not very punctual, not following the timetable are the entrepreneurs. And this is not I am speaking about it. This is the research that speaks about it. That those people, if when you follow a decision tree, sometime maybe I can share with you my research that when you follow a decision tree, first of all, you see whether you have fixed planned working or not. If yes, then follow the next step. If you are having this, then follow the next step. Whether you are, wishing your friends on birthdays or not. So if you are regularly doing it, you fall into a timetable. And the more you are into the timetabling culture, you are less of an entrepreneur. Well, having said that, let us move on to the next point, which has been discussed by Hofstede, that is masculinity versus femininity. And here I do not mean masculinity versus femininity. It does not mean the men or women, but it means dominance and submissive culture. How dominant you are, how forceful you are, how assertive you are, how optimistic, or let us say how growth oriented, how productive you are. The more productivity we would place it into masculine. The more humble, calm, sophisticated, not sophisticated actually, the acceptance, the reachability, we will put it into femininity. So these are some of the dimensions that Hofstede is speaking about. Let us go on to the next slide. Can you click please on this Hofstede's cultural dimension? It is a link which will take you to the web link. If it is not going, then please you can open on Google from your No problem, because this link. Please click on this link. No problem. You can go to Google. Yeah, and type here Hofstede's cultural dimensions. HOFSTED.
It is already opening.
Yeah,
So
no
many
problem.
times it has been opened, so that's why the system has become slow.
No problem. When you go here, you will see anybody from home also, they can just go to this. If you go to this slide, it will open Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Though there has been technological difficulty throughout, this is some new feature of working, because we as educationalist, every day we are taking our classes on Zoom and Google Meet, but we never face any difficulty like this.
Yes, I also do admit. This is a platform where I faced also difficulty, and many others have faced difficulties.
So I hope the audience is connected, and I just do not know how many people are connected. I'm speaking to a screen, or I do not know what is happening, whether you are able to see my face or not.
No, we cannot see you from the very beginning. Your video was off and still you are not being seen. But number of attendees is 159.
Yeah, from my side everything is okay, but I do not know. I do not have any connection, icon wherein the video can be opened. So I just do not know how and what to do. I mean, this platform that you have shared with me does not have any option to open.
That may be because of the reason that you are now speaking from your mobile phone.
I wanted to speak from my computer only.
Oh, then how it is, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what. It is a big hassle for me to speaking from a mobile, and then I am looking onto another computer and speaking from there. My all fonts are, messed up. My whole slide. This is not the actual slide that I wanted to present. The presentation slide which I prepared was.
Your slides are clearly visible.
Yeah. But this was not actually what I wanted to present. I have prepared something else for you, but this was the basic, because this is on Canva. My slides are on Canva, on MacBook, and because the compatibility of, technology hassle, what you can say, and so we were not able to do it. Anyway, it does not matter. These are, petty things. It should not come in the way of learning.
Since I get a break in the midst of your presentation, maybe now you are proceeding towards the end of the presentation. May I now know from Professor Soral sir, till what time Dr. Fatima should speak? Have you been able to contact with the other speaker? Because Professor Simon is also here. He was supposed to chair your session, and now I, being the coordinator of the first session, am just replacing him in that capacity.
Okay.
So just Professor Soral sir, are you hearing me? Sir, please unmute. Anyway,
no issues. You can continue.
Okay.
No, actually, Professor Shyam Sunder was not being able to come. So now Professor Soral can indicate about his availability also. Okay, I am connecting him through WhatsApp. You please carry on.
Sir, have you been able to connect to the internet? Have you been able to connect to the website that I have shown a link here?
That is not in my hand. That is in WIRC, ICAI.
Okay,
Some
okay.
Mr. Sharma is looking after. I am from
Yeah,
IA.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, right, sir. Okay, right, sir.
Professor Arindam. Yeah.
Sir, you are
am I audible
having
there?
two devices open.
Yeah. 1 minute.
Yes,
1 minute.
yes.
I'm audible now. There is no echo, na? I'm shifting to
No,
from one to other device. Yeah, the status now right now is that Professor Shyam Sunder has been listening to Professor Kaneez all through. He is very much in the session,
Okay.
but the problem is that as soon as he is connecting as panelist, there is some technical problem which is carrying on. So we are trying to resolve that. He is available, and he promised that if everything goes on well, he will be taking a session for 1 hour now. By the time Dr. Kaneez makes it over. So my request to you is that we are still trying to solve that problem. And in the meantime,
may we request?
Yeah. Hello.
May we request Professor Simon? May we request Professor Simon to take over from me?
Yeah. Before
Because
that,
he is
I think. Yeah, he's here. There is no problem. We are all. We may all continue till 8:15.
Yes.
Okay. My point is that
So
if
Professor
the
Simon,
situation is permitting to you, sir, Professor Arindam,
yes.
if situation is permitting,
Yes, sir.
okay, you may ask Professor Simon to introduce, because he was to introduce Fatima, na? So he may
Yes,
take
yes,
2-3
yes,
minutes
yes,
in
yes.
introducing her also. Okay, and
Yes, yes.
you may continue.
Yes,
And
yes.
Dr. Kaneez, we will inform you maybe in next 10 minutes that you have to continue till what time. So you carry on, please. Okay, we are just in continuously discussing with Professor Shyam. Okay,
Okay, sir.
I'll have to
Well,
disconnect because
carry
I'll
on.
have to exit from the webinar for the while. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
No
sir,
issues.
yes.
I will be.
Please carry on.
So Professor
Please
Simon,
carry on.
Professor Simon, do you hear me? Professor
Yes, sir, I
Simon?
can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes. So will you please introduce Dr. Fatima, because you were supposed to chair her session. If you have her details with you, say a few words about.
Good evening, madam, and good evening, all the dignitaries who are here on this wonderful webinar, which is a joint venture of Western India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and the Indian Accounting Association. This session is, which is now in progress, is by Khanis Fatima, who is the head of the Department of Accounting in the College of Economics, Management and Information Systems in the University of Nizwa in Sultanate of Oman. And she is talking to us on something which is very interesting, cultural impact of accounting, because when we look at the various dimensions of accounting, we have heard a lot about accounting in its conventional form, talking about looking at the profit and loss account, balance sheet, accounting ethics. Then we started moving into carbon accounting, environmental accounting, and also accounting for climate change. But today we are listening to something on the cultural impact, which is really interesting. So I was listening through her session, and it talks about some research which she has done on this dimension. So thank you, Madam Khanis, for your valuable time and inputs. I don't know whether you know me personally, because I was supposed to coordinate, and in between we had this problem here. I am Professor Simon Tattal, the Chief Editor of the Indian Journal of Accounting, representing Indian Accounting Association. And I'm currently a professor of the Department of Commerce, University of Kerala. So thank you so much for your session, and over to you, Professor Arvind.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Simon. Okay, Dr. Fatima, you please
thank you,
continue
Professor.
your discussion.
So what I was requesting was to connect to the site which I have already given, that where we can compare the various countries on the Hofstede cultural dimension. If it has been connected, then probably we can have a look at it.
No, it has not been connected. Mr. Sharma, you please type what Madam has told you. Hofstede, 1984 or whatever year she has
No,
mentioned.
no, it is
Hofstede.
just Hofstede cultural dimension. If you will just type on Google, or no need to go to the link also. If you open Google and you can type Hofstede cultural dimension, it will open up Hofstede.insights, and it will open up the comparison of various countries. Because from here only you will be able to understand the differences between countries and their behaviors and how it is impacting the overall behavior of the way we are working.
So he is connecting from organizer. You may see him in the list of panelists. So Mr. Sharma, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So as Madam told right now, that you please type Hofstede, H-O-F-S-T-E-D-E
No, sir.
in Google. No?
H-O-F.
You please.
मैम व्हाट्सएप कर दीजिए मैडम.
Yes, sir.
व्हाट्सएप कर दीजिए मैम, मैं देख लेता हूँ.
May I type it in the chat?
यस मैम, आपको मैंने व्हाट्सएप किया था ना लिंक मेरा ईमेल आईडी. व्हाट्सएप
He is asking you to WhatsApp from the link from the number from which he has sent you.
But this phone I am using. Okay, let me try.
No, you tell. Now you are audible.
I
The
can.
spelling you telling.
Yes, sir. I can.
Oh. Hofstede, H-O-F.
Yes, it is there. I already sent you a message. You have seen it. Hofstede, cultural dimensions.
Yes.
And if you open up the website here, this one just type on Google, it will give you. And all the audience also, if you want to type it out, if you will type out, you will see this. Anybody who will type on their phone or on their devices, Hofstede cultural dimension, it will appear. And when you go to the website, you will be able to see something like type a country. So if you type the name of the country, simultaneously while we are going on.
Sharma ji, are you able to connect?
Let him try. I hope so. Let him try. So meanwhile, what we are going to talk about is, let us talk about the accounting dimensions. Here we have already noticed and we have already seen the cultural dimension. The cultural dimension are individual versus collectivism. Whether you are working on a professional manner individually, you are you are focused towards productivity, or you are working in a group collectivism. The second dimension.
Do you need to show your presentation file?
Yes, sir. It is not with me. The file is also with Mr. Jay only. So while they are tackling this, difficult technological. Yeah. So I hope so. If you are able to see my presentation, you will also be able to see the link. Anyway, so the furthermore to carry on, because we can go on to gray. So meanwhile, while they try to connect to the comparison of various countries, I will like to focus on gray dimension. So Gray has proposed in 1988. Gray developed significant accounting hypothesis using the cultural values which have been developed by Hofstede. And what he did was that he connected the cultural dimension with the accounting dimensions. And then he tried to address the accounting dimensions by focusing on the cultural influence. So let us go to the next slide that you have, and we will see that what are the various accounting. Can you please move on to the next slide? Yeah. So here we can see that what Gray has focused on. Gray talks about professionalism versus statutory control. So professionalism versus statutory. So what he means here is that the individual professional judgment, like what you and me, I think by case to case basis. So we are not talking about say rule based, but we are talking about principle based. So when we say principle based, that means we are more professional, and by statutory control we means we are following the prescriptive legal requirement. Yani you are asked to fill up the forms, you have to fill up. So when you apply this into say accounting, lot of the documents that are required to fill up. Of course, the statutory control is there, but along with that, whether you are considering each work as by professional in a professional way or not. So, so what Hofstede says that Hofstede has linked the individualism to professionalism, and he says if you are higher on individualism, you will be higher on professionalism, and you will be weak on uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance means you are ready to take up more risks, and more you will be towards entrepreneurship. And the behavior towards masculinity, that means the behavior of dominance would be higher. If the behavior of dominance is higher, then it will say that there is low power distance. So if you try to connect all these links, all these points together, see from where we began. We started from the values, from the norms, from behaviors, from beliefs, from our day-to-day life, from our family culture, and where we have landed onto. We are landing onto professionalism. The culture and belief that we have, it has made up the behavior what we are, and this behavior comes you can look at it in by the way you are doing business and by the way you are handling the professionalism. So professionalism is directly connected with individualism, then it is connected with low uncertainty behavior, and it is related positively related with masculinity and assertiveness. And along with all this, low power distance is seen. That means the value of the subordinates is equally considered. The voice of the dissent is heard. Let us go to the second point. That is uniformity. And for uniformity versus flexibility. So just now I discussed about say uniformity and flexibility means whether you are following the same norms or you are having the planned working, or time to time everything is fixed, or you have forms for each and every task that you have to do. Of course, in accounting, for taxation purposes, for legal purposes, by following the standards, you have no forms for everything. Okay, that is all right.
Hello, Chancellor sir.
Hello.
Please try to connect to the internet, connect to the web link that I have sent. Okay, because as soon as I finish these four dimensions of accounting, I would like to go back to the Hofstede's cultural dimension, and you will have a amazing, you will be really interested to see how these dimensions are working. And usually being into the profession of accounting, focusing only on numbers, why the accountants usually don't read novels? Why we don't read novels? No, we don't read novels because in a novel the only numbers are the page numbers. So there is not much interesting. But when we go to culture, there are many more interesting things. Well, so when having talked about uniformity, here Gray shows that the preference to uniform accounting practices means that the companies are less flexible. If they are less flexible, that means they are high towards uncertainty avoidance. They would not like to accept or indulge themselves into new ventures. If they are not indulging themselves into new ventures, it means the power is concentrated. And when there is centralization of power, it means you are on larger power distance index according to Hofstede. See the beauty where we are talking about. We are talking about flexibility and uniformity, and then we are talking about the power distance, with whom the power lies. And this has been spoken a lot. Gray has given these norms in connection with Hofstede, and these connections, the Hofstede dimension and the Gray dimension, they have been studied by almost 500, 600 researchers all over the world. And they have proved that culture does impact accounting. Okay, let us move on to the next slide, please. And we will go to see the third dimension. Please move on to the next slide.
Dharmaji, next slide.
Yeah, and here what we see is the other two dimensions, that is the conservatism versus optimism. I will give you some examples from accounting in which how we are behaving. We behave in a conservative manner because, of course, the concepts and conventions that we are following in accounting. So conservatism is one of the important, discussion where what we do, why we disclose, whether we disclose or we do not disclose. Okay, let us, we will talk about that later on, because Gray has also done a big research on
Dr. Kaneez, Dr. Kaneez.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt for a moment. Actually, because
Okay.
we were trying to connect to Professor Shyam Sunder, and I think he is coming on the audio. So kindly bear with us for a minute. Professor Shyam Sunder, can you hear me, please?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, I think now everything is settled. We may continue. I mean, is it comfortable? We may request Dr. Kaneez to wind up now.
Okay, I'm ready. Are we going to use your webinar system on my mobile, or are we going to use the Zoom link I sent to you?
मिश्रा जी क्या पोजीशन है? ये इसी से चल जाएगा या Zoom यूज करना पड़ेगा?
हम सर ये से चल जाएगा सर,
इसे चल जाएगा ना? आप उन्हें पीपीटी दिखा दोगे ना मोबाइल पे?
मैं आपको पीपीटी जैसा भी मैडम का दिखा रहा हूँ वैसा आपको पीपीटी में दिखा दूंगा. नेक्स्ट बोलिए, मैं चेंज कर दूंगा.
Professor Shyam, he says that he will be able to show you the PPT on your screen of mobile, and you may manage the way Dr. Kaneez is managing. Is that comfortable, sir?
Okay, we'll manage like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Dr. Kaneez, extremely sorry. It was such a nice presentation going on. So, you may kindly wind up now.
Okay. Okay, sir. I'll take another 10 minutes to wind up.
You may even shorten it. I'm sorry to say that, because Professor may have to leave by 8:10 or so. Maybe another 5 minutes you may kindly conclude. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, right, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, then we can continue with this conservatism and the optimism. Then go for the fourth one, that is the secrecy and transparency. So we here have the various dimensions brought together. You see, individualism, if it is high on individualism, is high on professionalism, low on uniformity, low on conservatism, and low on secrecy. Similarly, if you talk about power distance means low on professionalism, high on uniformity, conservatism, we cannot say anything, but it is high on secrecy anyway. Let us go on to the next slide, and then I will conclude that these are some examples from accounting conservatism and accounting optimism way of behavior. And with this, we can link through all the way back from where we started. We started from cultural beliefs and norms, and we are ending up with the accounting, we are ending up with aspects from financial accounting. So whether it is we are talking about asset valuation, or we are talking about provision, or we are talking about interest, you see how and what is our behavior. So for in the case of a stock, probably yesterday also, madam was discussing very well, and like encyclopedia she discussed, and she gave all the various rates and rules and regulations. Also, she's sitting on the standard board. Look here, she was talking about stocks also, no? Whether you would like to value it or not, or amortization, how it is going to be. So this is how we link our accounting values, and accounting is linked to the cultural values, and what is actual the culture is. So this is how we link the whole thing. Probably I have been able to, I do not know whether I have been able to or not, but let us say some kind of awareness we have created that culture is directly linked to the behavior, and behavior is linked to the accounting. Can you go on to the last slide? I'll make it as a last slide. Please go to the next slide. That is cultural influences and accounting harmonization. And this talks about the various research. So cultural influences are there, and from the year, like you say, from the 80s till today, everybody has been studying, and there have been a lot many researchers who have talked about various cultural influences. And this is why now we see Islamic accounting and Islamic banking also coming up, and the new accounting theory of Islamic world is also there. And with this, I hope I have been able to, do justification to my topic. And as I gave you the link to the website, anytime you go there, you just click on the name of the country. Simultaneously, if you click the name of the second country to it, you will be able to see the difference in the behavior of different countries. And I hope, I wish that you go there and you enjoy the working the links of various countries with you. And with this, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak here. My mentor, my teacher, Professor G. Sorrell, I am very thankful to him that he introduced me to this big platform among all these stalwarts here. And probably we might come back again on some another platform to discuss, to speak about, to share our research. Thank you, Professor Simon, and thank you all the other dignitaries on the dais yesterday and today for coming together on this in this very auspicious occasion, on this event, on this global platform. And it was nice presenting to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Fatima. So on behalf of Indian Accounting Association and on behalf of the Western India Regional Council of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, I sincerely thank you, being the coordinator of the session, for speaking elaborately on a topic which is not much heard about. So we are very much enriched by your deliberation in the title Cultural Impact on Accounting. So with this, I end up this session, and I would request Professor G. Simon Thatil, professor from Kerala University, and my colleague at IAA, who is the chief editor, to kindly take over from me for the next session. Professor Simon, please.
Thank you, Professor Arvindam, and very good evening to one and all. We are already short of time, and we had our interventions and problems with technology. So without wasting much time, I welcome Professor Shyam Sunder to start off with his presentation, same because I think he has to leave by 8 o'clock. Over to you, Professor Shyam.
Thank you, Professor Simon and Professor Sorrell and the group for this opportunity.
Could 1 minute, sir. Professor Simon, can somebody introduce him for a minute?
Yes, sir. I can.
Yeah, you can. You can.
Kindly take a minute. Please stalwart with us. Kindly. 1 minute, please. Yeah.
Okay, just give me some time. I was I follow it.
Yeah, by the time Professor Arindam is just searching the introduction on his screen.
Yes, I have already found out. If you see
Yeah,
something,
fine.
you can.
Kindly go on, sir. Kindly. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So, respected audience, it is a privilege for me to introduce Dr. Shyam Sunder, who is the James L. Frank Professor of Accounting, Economics and Finance at the Yale School of Management and Professor in the Department of Economics. He is renowned accounting theorist and experimental economist. His research contributions include financial reporting, information in security markets, statistical theory of valuation, and design of electronic markets. He is a pioneer in the fields of experimental finance and experimental macroeconomics. Dr. Sunder has won many awards for his research that includes 10 books and more than 220 articles in the leading journals of accounting, economics, and finance, as well as in popular media. Dr. Sundar's current research includes the problem of structuring US and international accounting and auditing institutions to obtain a judicious and efficient balance between regulatory oversight and market competition. He is a past president of the American Accounting Association, former director of the Milstein Center for Corporate Governance and Performance at Yale, distinguished fellow of the Center for Study of Science and Technology Policy in Bengaluru, and research fellow of Research Institute of Economics and Business Administration, Kobe University. He is also a member of the International Academic Advisory Boards of the Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, and the Business School of Jindal Global University, Sonepat, India. So with this introduction, I would request Professor Shyam Sunder to resume his talk.
Professor Shyam, I also welcome you on behalf of Indian Accounting Association and request you to continue till 8:15. Kindly continue till 8:15. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sorrell and Professor Simon, for this opportunity. I am sorry for the delay in this and have to make everybody wait, but I hope everything will go forward. At the outset, I should mention that I'm going to skip some slides because the session has had to be shortened a little bit. So please, I should apologize for that. And second, I'm going to focus my presentation on the developments in financial reporting, mostly in US and international domain, and because that's what I'm most knowledgeable about. So please forgive me for that focus. And I hope there will be some time available for some questions so we can discuss any questions that arise during the presentation. Next. You went too far. One slide earlier, please. You went too far. You back up one slide. Hello.
Sharmaji, please go backward. Ek slide.
Okay. Now you meant forward. I meant backward. I wanted to show the second slide and not the fourth slide. Okay. So as an overview of what I shall talk about, I'm going to mention about the roots of accounting and auditing failures in various parts of the world over the previous half a century or almost a century. And we are going to look at both short-term, medium-term, and long-term perspectives on what might be the reasons for these failures. I'm going to talk about what happened when in late 1970s, the United States government policy decided to push for greater competition in auditing. What were the consequences of that and why those consequences arose? Third, that I'm going to talk a little bit about the transformation of financial reporting system over the past century from what was essentially a system of social norms to a system of written rules and standards. And we'll talk about the consequences of this shift from social norm to written rules and standards on practice of accounting, education, and research. And we'll talk a little bit about some policy alternatives looking into the future. Don't go back, please. Forward, forward. Yeah, go forward, please. Slide 3. Okay, so here's the, let's do some rethinking of the roots of accounting and auditing failures. Next slide. Let's just start with a short-term perspective. The immediate causes of failures in auditing and accounting, which are, we have seen many of them in US, in Europe, in Asia, including India. Those failures can be linked to the beliefs of executives, auditors, lawyers, investments, and commercial bankers and corporate directors that they could default on their duties without having to bear the consequences. And this was compounded by the failures of various governments around the world to discipline the failures of individuals. And many cases, of course, cases take a long time to wind through the courts of law. And the question is, will the enforcement of the existing laws remedy the problem of frequent audit and accounting failures? In my judgment, the signs on this are mixed. If you go back 20 years ago, Enron's auditor, Arthur Andersen, went out of business. But his law firm, which was equally culpable, did not go out of business. They are, in fact, still in business and claim to have very high ethical standards. Qualified people are reluctant to serve as directors. Nominating committees have some difficulty getting qualified people to agree to serve on boards in many cases. There are more employees, non-employees on audit and compensation committees, but it's not clear that the behavior of compensation and audit committees has really improved by any important respect. Because executive compensation, at least in US, has continued to show very fast rate of growth, much faster than rate of growth of wages for other employees. And that obviously has a connection with the governance failures in the board compensation committees. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we go to the medium-term perspective, there are, in United States, there are two critical events of recent decades that we have to think about. One, the US government in 1979 decided to push competition in the audit industry. And second, there was a rise in performance contingent compensation for senior corporate executives beginning 1980s and especially 1990s. Now, these policies were driven by the dominant economic theories prevailing at the time. The competition was also supported by the US Supreme Court through their famous decisions, the Bates versus the Bar of the state of Arizona. The idea was from economics that the competition will promote. Hello? Hello?
Hello? Sir, आवाज आ रहा है. Shyam sir, आपका sound आ रहा है. बोलिए sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the general economic theory was that if you promote more competition, there will be greater economic efficiency. But it turns out that the audit industry is a textbook example of what economists called a market for lemons. What is a market for lemons? This was a famous paper by an economist, Prof, in 1970. And the paper showed that customers of a product or service cannot discern the quality of the product or service. Greater competition in the market for that product or service will reduce the price, but also the quality of the service. Until price and the quality becomes very low, so junk gets sold at very low price. And the problem in auditing is that it's very real. I think there's some noise on the line. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes sir, yes sir.
Hello?
Yes sir.
You are laudable, sir. You are laudable clearly, please.
I hear a lot of someplace.
मिश्रा जी और कोई साउंड ऑन है तो म्यूट कर दीजिए. हाँ.
Okay sir.
Anybody else muted? Okay. So what happens is that if the customer cannot tell the quality and you have competition in the market for that product or service, then prices go down, but the quality goes down too. Now, if I have to go and buy apples or oranges in the marketplace, I can tell the quality. So competition works fine. But in case of auditing, it's very hard. The real customers of audit service are the shareholders, especially the small shareholders who are so far away from the company. They have no idea what is the quality of audit work done by the auditors. And you promote competition among auditors, it makes it a market for lemons. The quality and the price declines. Now, throughout 1960s and 70s, there was this debate in US and about promoting more competition in professional services. In 1978, there were a number of famous Supreme Court decisions. And then in 1979, the US government, Department of Justice, and Federal Trade Commission decided to require the professional associations like lawyers, accountants, doctors, dentists, to remove the anti-competitive clauses from the codes of ethics. February 79, American Institute of CPAs dropped the anti-competitive clauses from the code of ethics. And that resulted in within a few years' time, a precipitous drop in the price of audit services and the quality of audit services. And the savings and loan industry bank failures in the mid-80s were a result of that competition. It was a misguided economic theory which was applied to auditing, because auditing is an extreme case where customer cannot tell the quality. Mind you, CFO is not the customer. Customer of audit service is the small shareholder. Now, in case of doctors and lawyers, at least the patient can tell, or his family can tell, whether the patient is live or dead after treatment, or whether after a trial in the court, whether a client is in or outside the jail. You can detect the quality of the lawyer or the doctor, but not the auditor. And that was the problem that led to the collapse of quality, because government tried to push for competition. Next slide, please. Now, in the longer term, if you look at what has happened over the past century, a different pattern emerges. Since the enactment of securities laws in the early 1930s in the United States, the US has seen a steady shift in financial reporting from, because if you look at financial reporting in 1920s and early 30s, and even in until 40s, the dominant idea that in the financial reporting domain was that what accountants and businessmen executives thought was the social norm of their community is what they did. There were not many written rules and regulations and standards until they developed in the past half a century, especially after creation of Accounting Principles Board in the United States in 1959. And now what has happened is that after 1959 and especially after creation of FAS, Financial Accounting Standards Board in 1973, there was more written rules and standards and regulations, and there was greater power of enforcing those regulations through threat of punishment by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So there was a major shift in virtually all aspects of accounting, including education, because education also shifted in the classrooms. Professors, teachers used to go and discuss how a particular transaction could be accounted for, in what are the various ways in which one could account for it, and what will be the pros and cons of treating a transaction in one way or another. But after increased codification of written rules and regulations. The atmosphere of the accounting classroom changed. Instead of discussing with the students the pros and cons of various treatments of a transaction, the emphasis shifted to students reading the written rules and regulations, memorizing them, and regurgitating them in the exam. So thinking got replaced by memorization. So that is a major change in how accounting education was being handled, came to be handled after the written rules replaced the social norms. So the weakening, if not collapse, of many aspects of accounting and auditing in the recent decades can be seen as a logical but unintended consequence of the policy decisions taken by government and accounting bodies over the last century. Okay, next slide, please. I could have gone through the thumbnail sketch of the collapse, but I've already described this in briefly, so I'm going to skip a few slides so we can save some time without going into the details of what happened in 1970s and 80s about the codes of ethics that I just referred to a moment ago. Next slide, please. I mentioned the professional codes of ethics, which used to prevent doctors, lawyers, and accountants from soliciting competitors' clients and customers and employees, and no advertising. That came to be seen in 1970s as an illegal behavior. And next slide, please. So under arguments from the lawyers and economists, the government decided to put restrictions on the codes of ethics, which prevented free competition in the professions and forced them to compete more openly. I'm not sure what happened in India at the time and what the state of affairs in India is, but perhaps we can discuss that during our discussion session. Next slide, please. So I mentioned this following this theory of economic theory of competition had a consequence for the auditing profession. They thought they will increase economic efficiency of the system by promoting more competition. Next slide, please.
Hello, yes, sir.
I'm waiting for them to change the slide. I request to change the slide. Okay, so I mentioned that in 1977, US Supreme Court ruling on Bates versus the State Bar of Arizona was a critical decision, which led to change in US policy on professional ethics. Next slide, please. US government changed its policy in the late 70s, including accounting. Next slide, please. There were good intentions, but the decision it turned out to be was to encourage greater competition in profession, especially in audit. Next, please. Next slide. The argument made by economists was that reputation of profession will prevent them from lowering the quality of their service under competition. But the problem was, next slide. The problem was that reputation cannot develop on the basis of performance, especially for auditors, because customers cannot see the quality of work being done. And generalizing that proposition to auditors was a particularly bad idea. Next slide, please. So the application of reputation argument as justification for competition in the market for audit was fatally flawed. And under pressure of competition, the market audit broke down and became a market for lemons. Next. You could see signs of the audit market breakdown in the 1980s because they could not, they had auditors began to lower their price of their services. That price of service was not, low price was not enough for them to maintain the quality of audit. So auditing became a loss leader. So auditors paid attention. They had to produce a new business model to survive. Next. What was the revised business model? Aggressive pricing of audit services to get work and cut the labor intensive part of audit and it by cheaper analytical reviews and use of audit service as a foot in the door to sell consulting services, which were very, very profitable. And then share the consulting revenue between consulting partners and audit partners of the firm. That's what began to happen. And so that means the audit partners were not bringing in enough revenue anymore. So they could not pay the audit employees very much. Look what happened. I'll show you a chart. This shows the trend of accounting degrees awarded. You see the drop in the early 90s. First, the number of accounting degrees flattened and then they began to drop because the salaries began to drop, as you can see here. And the CPA exam, number of people taking CPA exam also began to drop because it was not an attractive profession anymore. So consulting was a consequence of the audit failures and not a cause of the audit failures. But what happened when the quality of audit dropped, it led to bank failures and a very large number of liability suits. And some of those liability suits, as you can see, next please. Oh, I'm sorry, I've been moving forward. See, the fatal flaw, I didn't tell you to change things. Okay, after fatal flaw, move forward about 5 slides, please. More. Move forward, please. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, here you can see the drop in the number of accounting degrees being awarded in the US universities. Next slide, please. Number of students taking CPA exam, because being a CPA was not a very attractive thing anymore. Next slide, please. So consulting, next. Next. So consulting was a consequence of audit failures and not a cause of the audit failures. Next, please. But lower quality of audit work being done led to audit failures and very large lawsuits. Next. You can see the amount of liability claims granted in various settlements and court judgments against the auditors. You can see the high bars in the later part of 80s. And auditors said, we can't afford to pay. Our compensation's gone down. Our liabilities are going up. How can we survive? Next. That's the amounts of settlements against auditors. Next. So decided the problem, the source of the problem was that in the US, they had a system of joint and several liability. So when there was a business failure and many people were being sued in the court, if 3 people were being sued and they were all found liable, if 2 people didn't have the money, the third one had to pay everybody's damages. In this case, auditors in very many cases ended up paying all the damages because other people had gone bankrupt. So they said, well, we have to get rid of joint and several liability in the US law. And how do you get rid of, how do you change the law? You change the law by lobbying the legislation. So they started financing elections. And you can see, next slide, please. This is the amount, this is the amount of funding the auditors provided for elections. A sharp rise in accountants' funding of the elections. And in 1995, it paid off. In 1995, under President Clinton, US Congress passed a new law. Next slide, please. I mean, this is the rise in the contributions made by accountants to elections, political contributions. Next slide, please. Next, please. So the reward of this financing of elections was 1995 legislation by the US Congress. It was called Public Company Security Liability Reform Act, PSLRA 1995. And this legislation switched from joint and several to proportional liability. That's what auditors wanted, reduce their risk. For corporate management, it permitted forward-looking statements under a safe harbor rule. And this was the only instance of President Clinton in 8 years of presidency when his veto was overturned by Congress because Congress elections were being financed by accountant in a very big way. Next, please. So after PSLRA 95, auditors adopted a new business model. They said, we are going to discard, we are not going to call it auditing, we are going to call it assurance services. Audit partners were pressured to sell consulting services, and the internal reorganization of the power and responsibility of audit firms took place in a very large scale. Next, please. And 1990s after PSLRA were happy days. Those were the times of the dot-com bubble. Everybody was doing well. The stock market was going well. And in 1999, Securities and Exchange Commission saw the adverse consequences of this, and they tried to warn against it, tried to slow things down, but they couldn't slow it down. And then came the dot-com bubble, burst in 2001, 2002, huge number of massive corporate failures, of which you know about, Enron, Global Crossing, and many, many other large corporations. And major audit and accounting scandals happened because there was a well-meaning government policy encouraged competition in audit industry that could not bear the pressure of competition. Next. So after that, in 2002 came the new legislation, Sarbanes-Oxley, and tried to put more constraints and on internal controls and new auditing system for them. But the basic problem that gave rise to these difficulties has not been dealt with, and that was what to do about competition in the market for auditing. Next, please. I want to talk for a few minutes about the shift over last century, since 1930s, from social norms towards written accounting rules. Next, please. I'll just do an overview of this and skip some of the detailed slides. The norms of accounting are important in financial reporting. Financial regulation of securities in 1930s induced a shift from norms, social norms, which are not written down, to written standards of accounting. And that has had a major consequence. Next, please. So let's see. Let's see. Can you back up a little bit, please? Nature of social norms. Back one. More back. Back. Okay. Okay. Next, please. So, what do we mean by social norms? Social norms is what we expect each other to do in any given situation. I mean, how we eat, how we talk to each other, how we behave with each other. It used to be that a good part of accounting and auditing also used to be run by social norms, which was a social consensus in the community of accountants and business. Next, please. I'm sure you're familiar with the common law approach, because common law is used in India, even though it developed in England. because common law was custom, acceptance, and judicial precedence. And common law comes from behavior of people and their judgment, and not from experts. And the force of common law arises from the usage, just like language. How do we determine what is the meaning of the word chair? Well, the meaning is determined by common usage. But over last century, the progressive replacement of common law approach by statutory thinking has taken place in accounting. Because now more and more people think that you need written rules to be able to do accounting properly. And introduction of competition has actually made things worse. Next, please. Here I have just on the slide, next slide, please. I've just given some examples of, if you go back to early part of 20th century in the United States, the Institute of Accountants explicitly said, and they tried to establish procedures by which accountants could develop their social norms without writing down the rules and regulations. Next, please. So if you look at the word GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, what does it sound like? General acceptance. What is general acceptance? Well, general acceptance is a social norm. It's not the original idea of GAAP was just a social norm. But now what has happened after last 50 years, that GAAP has been captured by the people who write written rules and say this is GAAP, and we are going to force you to implement these rules, and we'll call that GAAP. So the question is, how did financial reporting fall into the trap of written standards of like this? Next, please. I mean, if you look, in case you're wondering, let me talk a little bit about as an example of a social norm. What was revenue recognition? Well, revenue recognition was inherently subjective, and the complete specification of conditions was considered unnecessary and infeasible. There was no authoritative source, and accountants had to make a judgment at what point of time have the revenue been earned by the company. That was a social judgment by the accountant. It was, accountant has to stand by that. And the first description of the revenue recognition in 1934-35 was just one paragraph. Now you see FASB's new revenue recognition standards are dozens of pages, scores of pages. Do we have any better definition or understanding of what is revenue recognition? All we have done is to replace a judgment of an expert accountant by written rules, but not improve the actual quality of financial reporting. Next, please. How do norms work? Because social norms are subjective, they are incomplete, and how do they work in law? I mean, in the common law, when somebody is accused of a crime, in the US or British system, I suppose in Bombay too, you are tried under the statutory laws of evidence, And after that, the judge turns to the jury and says, well, gentlemen, these are lay people who are not expert lawyers. Say, do you think the accused person is guilty beyond reasonable doubt? Now, how much doubt is reasonable? No numbers, no percentage. It is purely a matter of judgment. That's how law works, common law works. And that's how accounting used to work, if you look at it 100 years ago. But lawyers are very smart. They are able to keep both statutory law and common law and work with both of them together. In next slide, please. But in accounting, somehow most, maybe many, if not most accountants have come to think that only written rules and standards, which are the accounting equivalent of statutory law, can work, and accounting equivalent of common law, which will be the social norms, cannot work in accounting. Now it's up to you. You can tell me in the discussion phase of this session what you think about it. Next, please. So in the early part of the 20th century, the Institute of Accountants did a lot of work to try to facilitate development of norms without having to write down the detailed rules and regulations. Next, please. So accountants took pride in having the judgment, is standing by the judgment and say, well, this is a social norm. This revenue has been earned and therefore should be recognized, and this revenue has not yet been earned and therefore should not be recognized, and stand by their judgment under pressure from their clients. That's what gave the respect and integrity and status to the accountant. As accountants switched, they became more susceptible to pressure from the clients. They started looking for justification in rules. Instead of resisting the pressure from the client by their judgment, they wanted to use rules as a defense against pressure from the client. And that's what has happened in the recent decades in the United States. Next, please. So when the great crash happened in 1929 in US and Securities Exchange Commission was created, people kind of lost faith and they say, well, we can't. So every time there's a big scandal, whether it's a financial crisis of 2008 or the dot-com bubble burst of 2001 and earlier crises, every time there's a crisis, people say, let's write down the rules. Then the politicians feel that they have done something and they have something concrete to show. And that's what's been happening repeatedly in the United States. Next, please. So federal securities regulations came. I don't need to go into the details of this. Next, please. So rule making became institutionalized. Our first Committee on Accounting Procedure was created, then Accounting Principles Board came, and then it was replaced by a Financial Accounting Standards Board in '73. And now there is a international organization. So are they still seeing my slide? Looks like my slide has disappeared from the screen.
So your slide is visible, sir.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. They can see the slides. I don't see them. So
it's visible.
No, but if I don't see the slide, then I don't know what the watching. Okay, thank you. So the institutionalization of rulemaking has taken place now with the FASB and IASB at the worldwide level. And next, please. Next, please, again. But these systems that we have created have a structural weakness because FASB and IASB are the only bodies whose sole function is making rules. They have no other functions except to make rules. And a permanent rule-making bureaucracy has to make new rules to justify their existence. Because if they don't make any new rules, people say, what are you doing? What did you do this year? So remember, what we have done by creating FASB and IASB, we have made sure that the rule book will get thicker and thicker and thicker over time, whether you need it or not. Next, please. And the fact, when you have somebody whose job it is to make new rules, that generates new requests from auditors. Anytime they have a conflict with a client, whether some revenue should be recognized or not, the client says, show me the rule. So they go to the rule maker, say, well, there's no rule in your book about this. Show me the rule so I can argue with the client. If you can't show me the rule, I'll let the client do what they want. So instead of using their judgment, accountants have just become not only readers of rules and implementers of rules, but also a mechanism to pressure these bodies to keep writing more and more detailed rules. And that's what has been happening in the recent decades. Next, please.
Excuse me, sir, how much more time you'll require? Because we need some time for the discussion part also.
Professor Sorrell mentioned.
Yeah, it is 8:15 now.
Oh, it's 8:15. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed the. Okay, let me wrap it up in.
Okay, sir. Okay,
yeah,
fine. Absolutely fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let me wrap it up so we'll have time for discussion. Okay, I'll have to tell you to move the slides. So we have created a lot of rule-making monopolies, and which have become basically a roadmap for evasion. And in most parts of the world, accountants have come to see written rules as progress. And my argument is that no, written rules are not progress. They actually can make things worse. And I'm going to skip. Would you go to slide 70, please? 70. Okay, so I think the pendulum seems to have swung towards written standards from social norms over the last century. And we need to reconsider a stronger role, a better balance between social norms and professional and personal responsibility in accounting and business community. And the performance contingent executive compensation has not been helpful. And we need to reconsider the virtue of promoting competition among the auditors. I mentioned it has become a market for lemons, and better use of social norms by reestablishing a balance. Next slide, please. So when you see these collapses and failures of accounting and auditing in the recent decades, is it bad people or bad policies? I think it is the bad policies, and we need to rethink about alternative solutions. I don't have time to talk about them. We can have competition for accounting standards, more competition, and less competition in the audit market, and minority directors for the real elections, scale back on performance contingent managerial compensation, and think of even better approaches through discussion and debate within the profession. And I hope my remarks will encourage more debate and discussion and disputes in the accounting profession rather than accepting what the rule makers write in India or abroad. Next slide, please. What is better accounting and how do we get there? I think these are very open questions. They need more attention from all of us in accounting and auditing. We usually look at each component of the system. That's important, but we also need to look at the whole system. And next slide, please. This is look at this drawing, okay? You see a waterfall, and after water falls, the water moves in a channel to the back, moves to the left, moves to the right, moves to the left again, and there's a waterfall again, okay? Every piece of this drawing looks logical, but the whole thing makes no sense, right? That's a famous drawing by a Dutch artist, M.C. Escher. And sometimes we have to look at the big picture, not just the piecewise. Same thing I would say, next slide, please. If you look at these two photographs, on the left, there's a grass on my lawn, and you can see every blade of grass and the roots in the detail. On the right side, you see what Earth looks like from the moon. It's the same Earth I see on the left and the right, but they are very different views. When this photograph was taken by Apollo spacecraft in 1968, it changed our view of the world. You say, oh, all 7 billion of us live on this little globe. That's where we are born, and that's where we're going to die. And it gave a new perspective to the environmental issues in the world. So sometimes going into details tells you something, but sometimes you need to step back and see the bigger picture. And what I've tried to do in this talk is to look at the bigger picture of accounting and auditing, about where we're going and what can we do to make things better. Thank you for your patience, and I appreciate the time you have given me, and I hope we can use some time for some questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful presentation on what actually is happening in accounting and auditing, and what is the real accounting and auditing, and how do we get there. And what I liked the most was looking at the picture in its holistic, in its total, having a total view of it. You have also taken us through the short-term, medium-term, and the long-term perspectives, the movement from social norms to how they become prescriptive, and what is actually happening with competition in accounting and auditing. Thank you so much. Now, I think we have some questions by the participants in the chat box. So if the host could post those questions, we can take them up and seek the views of the speaker on what what are these questions and how perhaps these views can be
Professor
considered.
Simon, by the time the questions are being displayed, may I ask one question to
Sure.
Professor Shyam Sunder now?
Welcome. Sure, sir.
You please ask the person. He will be showing those questions on the screen so that you may read them out to the professor. Okay. Meantime, I'll take half a minute in asking a question.
Sure.
Professor Shyam Sunder sir, it was extremely wonderful. Actually, I'm very sorry that we had to cut short the time because of the technical glitches. My question to you is that what you finally concluded by saying that what is good corporate reporting, financial reporting, and how do we get there? You said that there are two open questions and we will go on answering them. That is really the right conclusion. My question to you is, what is your comment regarding the quality of corporate financial reporting during last some 30 years on the globe? Do you say that it has improved, it is going in the right direction, or what would your comment on that? Thank you, sir.
Number of people have tried to conduct studies of what can we say about improvement or worsening of financial reporting and auditing, of corporate financial reporting and auditing over in the recent half a century, let's say. I have not yet seen any evidence that supports the idea that financial reporting and auditing has improved. There are not much pieces of evidence which can conclusively establish that it has gotten worse. What we can see is corporate failures, corporate frauds, lawsuits against directors, lawsuits against auditors, and the compensation, the court judgments that are being made. But all those variables depend on the legal environment, on the liability regime, which has changed in the PSLRA in 1995, and changes in the structure of the corporations and the nature of their business and so on. As you know, a large part of the growth sector of the US businesses or other businesses too elsewhere has been in the field of intangible assets. So much of the assets of major corporations like Apple or Google or Facebook is in the form of intangible assets, not the old steel or aluminum firms or railway companies whose most assets were in concrete objects like rail lines or bridges or factories or blast furnaces. So those were concrete objects in the list of assets. Now most of the assets are intangible items for not only for financial industry but also for the technology industries. So the accounting issues arising in this new business environment are far more complicated and difficult. And they require a thinking accountant, an accounting student who thinks and analyzes, and the rules are not going to help them. There's another problem with the rules that I didn't get a chance to talk about. You know, it takes a rule-making body 2, 3, 5, 10 years to write a rule. How long do you think it takes Goldman Sachs to design a new security or transaction form or even corporate form that will get around the rule? you know.
Yes, yes.
It takes them maybe an hour. So accountants, 3 years or 5 years writing a rule, and people in the investment banks or in the banks already have the way of getting around it. In last 55 years, in America, accountants have written about 54 standards to try to get long-term leases capitalized on the balance sheet. What has been the result? Very little capitalization on the leases. Why? Because the financial engineers are much faster. So the rules are and they have not.
Okay, sir. Can we take up the 2 questions which have come up?
Thank you very much. Yeah, please take those questions.
Professor Shyam, there was a question from Professor M.M. Khandelwal. His question is, do you agree with the Chanakya's philosophy of Yatha Raja Tatha Praja? This is one question. And the other question is, what is your take on GST in India leading to centralization?
Of course, I am hardly a person to disagree with Chanakya. Yatha Raja Tata Praja, of course, is so true. So is much of rest of Arthashastra. Last January in I actually went to Mysore in the Mysore Research Library. They have the manuscript of Arthashastra that I wanted to see. And Kautilya was very smart. Actually, he has 3 chapters in Arthashastra about accounting and auditing. And I have their translations are available. I have written paper about them. They are available on my website. I presented them at conferences. And Kautilya such detailed suggestions about accounting and auditing. In one sutra, he gives a list of 40 different ways in which financial reports might mislead, and auditors must check for them. In one sutra, he says that every 3 months, both the manager and the auditor must travel to the headquarters to give a report to the bosses in the capital. But he says they must travel separately. The manager are not supposed to travel to the headquarters. And I would love to give a talk about Kautilya's accounting. And there isn't a question. I can give you any number of. Thank you.
The other question is on how can you say that GST in India has resulted in centralization of authority? But I wonder whether you have said that.
Okay. Yes, that was the other part of the question. Well, we could have multiple taxes paying octroi at every city boundary and every state boundary and every district boundary, or utilization. We can't have it both ways. And the reason I understand, I'm not expert on GST, but we conference at IIM Ahmedabad a couple of years ago, in which we focused on GST, which had been implemented. And my understanding from experts is that in India is that GST messed up. because of these, how many, 5 or 6 different rates that people are pushing for from various states. It was effective decentralization. The original proposals for GST were far simpler. And here's an example. Decentralization, actually a more efficient solution if it's done with wisdom. And my impression is the last 30 or 40 years of work which had gone into developing the GST proposal in India through many, many governments, central and state governments, and many people had worked on this proposal over the years. It was just carried out a few years ago, but it was a result of development over many, many years. But then came this council where everybody has a say, and when somebody raises this question or that question, a simple, more efficient solution became politically impossible. That's my understanding. But I hope they're learning that lesson and will gradually move GST towards a more simplified structure than what they were forced to create as a political compromise a few years ago. That's my impression, but I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in this field.
Okay, thank you so much for your wonderful thoughts and the way you looked into what is better reporting and what is better accounting and what happened with competition in auditing. So thank you so much. There are no more questions on the chat box. So Professor Sorrell, shall we move into the next part? Shall we conclude with this session?
Yeah, I think there was somebody to propose vote of thanks. Whether Professor Ashok Agrawal was there?
Professor Ashok Agarwal, I didn't find him on this.
He's not there. So you just say a word of thanking him, and we move to the valedictory session, where both our senior and junior vice president will speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Professor Simon.
Yes.
I have put one question in chat box.
No, what was visible to me, I just got 2 questions. I didn't see your question. You can just raise it because you are now unmuted. You can directly speak to Professor.
The problem of convergence, Professor Sunder, I'm asking you about the problem of convergence with the IFRSs by the USA companies, because they are still following US gaps. I just want an opinion from you. Do you get my question?
Yeah, I get your question. Convergence is very bad. You'll be surprised by that. Okay. Why do I think? What's a popular car in India? What's the best car in India? Yeah. What is the best car?
There is no competition between Maruti, Hyundai, all other companies. You cannot say which is the best car.
Will it be good if Maruti is the most popular car? Is it a good idea for everybody to converge to Maruti and make it the monopoly car in India?
That's great. Yeah.
If anything that anybody produces, suppose, now think for a moment a world in which one set of accounting rules, whoever writes them, whether they are written in London or New York or in Delhi or Beijing, doesn't matter. Suppose one set of accounting rules were to be implemented and enforced all over the world. Will those rules suit the economic and business conditions everywhere in the best possible way? Will they be ideal set of rules? Can a single set of rules be ideal for every part of the world, for every economy, for every business? Okay, that's one part. And second, suppose you give the monopoly authority write the accounting rules for the whole world in one place, how would they find out what is a better accounting rule? Because they will have no basis for comparison. Today, you can compare. In Germany, this is what they're doing in US, or this is what we are doing in India. Look, this works better. Here are the pros, here are the cons. You can experiment with various ways of trying out different things and look at the results. In a world of monopoly, there can be no comparison, and therefore there can be no learning about what could be better. So unless you believe that a group of 10 or 20 people sitting on a table in London or New York or any place else have the wisdom to write down the ideal set of rules which are best for the whole world, unless you believe that, the whole idea of convergence is a very bad idea. Because India's business environment, or even within the European Union, when I talk to my friends who work in Italy or Germany or Netherlands or England, they say, no, our business environment is so different. And they have very different interpretations within European Union of the same IFRS rules in different countries of the European Union. Why? Why do they have different interpretations? And then when I go to Turkey, my friends in Turkey say, well, you know, we've been, for a number of years, we've been trying to translate these IFRS rule books into Turkish, but we don't have these words. We don't have Turkish equivalent for these words which can express the same meaning and the same idea that they're trying to express in English language. Not all languages can be translated exactly. For example, some of the American rules, for example, on contingencies used to tell you that when do you recognize a contingency? It is probable, it's possible, but not probable that it has occurred. Possible, but not probable. In how many languages in India can you translate that distinction between probable and possible? How many languages of the world can translate that distinction? I'm just giving you one example. Of course, there's limited amount of time. I can give you others. So basically, my answer is convergence is a path to a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Professor Arvindam, for your question. Professor Shyam Sunder, it was an insightful session, a lot of things to ponder over deep as far as all those who are in accounting and auditing are concerned. We would love to learn from you in future in depth and in detail. Thank you so much on behalf of the Western India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and the Indian Accounting Association, its president, all office bearers, the executive committee, and all of those who are here with us on this wonderful webinar. Thank you so much, and we wish to associate with you and your organization in future as well. So with that, we wind the session. I also thank the co-chairs, all the office bearers who were with us for this session. Thank you, and with that, we wind the session.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm grateful to you all.
Thank you very much, sir. So nice of you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Now for the valedictory session, is there anybody to be the master of ceremony? Any arrangement? Anybody listening to me?
Yeah, Vaderaji is there.
Vaderaji
Yes,
and
myself is also there.
Bora Sahib is there, na?
Bora
Yeah,
sir.
I am available.
Yeah.
Yes,
There was
I'm available.
one CA friend also. Bainiji, what was the name? There is one CA friend also to propose vote of thanks. Is he available right now?
I can see the name.
There is a name in the list.
One second. That is Desai. Drushti Desai.
Drishti, whether Drishti is there, I don't know. Bainiji, may I request you to conduct the validity session now? Please conduct this session. Invite people and conduct it. And if Drishti is not there, you propose finally vote of thanks and let us conclude.
Yeah. So thank you very much, sir. Welcome to the valedictory session of this webinar. And I think this was a wonderful webinar. And we learned a lot yesterday and today also. Even in beginning, we faced some technical issue, but somehow we could start to the sessions of Professor Shyam Sunderji. And now I welcome to the Professor Borasar and Professor Vaderaji and Drushti for the valedictory session. First of all, I would like to request Borasar to address the audience about this webinar. Borasar.
Thank you very much, Professor Bayani. First of all, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, audible, please.
First of all, I will welcome this very idea of organizing this webinar in joint venture and collaboration with the West India Regional Council and the Indian Accounting Association. This is really a handsome idea, and in future also we should go for such type of collaboration, and a long perspective of the accounting education and research can take place. This is my prima facie duty, that the number of speakers in the validity session, prior to this, all the 4 technical session, number of speakers has spoken a lot on various issues of the contemporary accounting issues, as well as the GST or the auditing and the other part of the taxation. And a thought-provoking lectures has been delivered, and a lot of number of question and answer sessions have also taken place, and we all have been apprised by the various latest developments and the changes taken place in the accounting education and research. Now my submission is that the research in the particularly to the professionals who are attending this webinar as a participant, they have to move toward the not only the accounting education but simultaneously the accounting research. A lot of developments has taken place all across the world, and we have to go up to the mark and relevant with the current scenario. So we should give more stress and emphasis on the accounting research, and institutes should also take certain steps to develop and promote the accounting research. Although the accounting standards has been developed by the and helped by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, but a lot of work has to be done yet by the institute, and the Indian Accounting Association is always there to be companion and to develop and to go for the research, because being an academician, we are always having the inclination towards the research, but simultaneously the professionals who has a very worthy experience of the practice in the field, and if they come for the research, and then it will be a development and a remarkable thing. One can just see that the UGC has also recognized the professionals to go for the research with the universities, and the university has given the CA degree equal to relevant equal to the PG degree of the universities. The another aspect which I will like to submit, that the professionals at here, I will make a proper request to Sri Chairman WISC Manish Gadia Sahab, Arpit Sahab, and our President Professor Soral and the Bayani sir, that the professionals should be the more and more member of the Indian Accounting Association. Being a chairman of the member driven committee, it's my humble submission that if all professionals, maximum of the chartered accountants and the corporate secretaries and the management accountants comes forward to be the member of the Indian Accounting Association, it will be a big job, and big task which will fill up, and it definitely going to develop the accounting education and accounting research, and we may have more webinars, more seminars, and so many other things. The another issue which I will like to submit, that the certain part of the curriculum of the institute shall be modified, and some part of the research orientation should be taken into the part of the curriculum and the syllabus of the institute, so that the student at the very beginning come forward with a research mind for the accounting education. Because only having the accounting degree is not sufficient, because in the practical field he has to go for, face the number of challenges, and if he is having the research oriented mind, he will be rather more successful and more relevant, and he will serve the cause of the accounting education and accounting research. Another thing which I will like to submit, that the professionals should come forward with the joint venture with the Indian Accounting Association, being a member, as well as they should attend the accounting conferences, Indian accounting conferences, which happens to be organized once a year, the annual conference, and otherwise the various conferences and seminars and symposiums are being organized by the branches, and the accounting professionals can attend them and can join them, and it will fulfill the cause of the accounting education research. Thank you very much, sir, and so nice of you. Thank you, Professor Soral.
Thank you, Bora sir. And I would like to say that Bora sir is a Junior Vice President of Indian Accounting Association. He has served more than 40 years as a professor, head and dean at Jainarani Vyas University, Jodhpur. Thank you, sir, for a very enlightened address and some good suggestions for the future development. Now I would like to invite Professor M.L. Vaderaji. Presently, he is a Senior Vice President of Indian Accounting Association. He has worked as a professor, head and dean at the again Jainarani Vyas University, Jodhpur, as well as the Manipal University. Now I request him to address the audience.
Hello. I am audible, sir?
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Our President, Professor Soral, General Secretary, my friend Professor Bhayani, Professor Gupta, Simon, Professor Boraji, and all other my team members, fellows, and all from the WIRC, Sri Manish Kadyaji, Arpit Kabraji, Drushti Desaiji, and others who are listening this webinar so late. Due to some technical problems, the program is extended. I will take 2-3 minutes. As yesterday, CA Abhishek has presented the accounting standards, that is our original gap, Indian gap, and now from afterwards this 1st April 2021, there is some exemption and all these things, and last that 4th category of MSME will have to comply for 8 standards. In this regard, our chairman, Professor Soral, have asked clearly yesterday that what about the IFRS for the SMEs, which already has been prescribed by the International Accounting Standard Board since 2009, and more than 80 countries has already been adopted it. It is around 317 pages IFRS, and if it is adopted, then all these old gap need not to be adopted. So here within 2-3 minutes I will tell that we one of my research scholar, PhD scholar, has conducted a study on the adoption of IFRS for small and medium sized enterprises in India. And since there is no IFRS in India, so we have just taken sample SMEs around 400 that owners of SMEs, the accountants of SMEs, managers of SMEs, internal auditors and external auditors as our and according to sample, in very brief, I will submit 2-3 recommendations that almost 80% respondents agreeably stated that there will be uniform accounting system for SMEs is required. 52.53 were found agreed to stating better transparency of performance if IFRS SMEs is adopted. Then all the recommendations, then we have taken all the points that transparency, availability of finance, international comparison and all these things. And around in each category there 70%, 80% because I am not having the time so read all the findings here. So they have in favor of adoption of this. Just the smaller units, they are just afraid of the cost burden. But when we have heard yesterday that they have to comply for so many our accounting standards already. So instead of that, already one this IFRS for SME is adopted by the ICI and the corporate ministry, then I think it will help. And we have conducted the study. Now the institute can elaborate, can conduct the further study, taking more their members because we have tried 700-800 chartered members. Then we go to the institute. If its own, if take a questionnaire and take the chartered accountants from this, and if this is to be adopted, I think it will give boost to the SMEs because due to non-uniformity with all other countries of the world, they are facing the problem of getting finance and joint venture and collaborations from the countries and also from the internal our financial institutions. So this is my one humble suggestion. Another suggestion I want to say that now this time due to liberalization, all the world bodies working in the accounting profession like this CPA, like ACCA, they are now in India. ACCA already started 10 years back. Now from last year, CPA has already started, and they are collaborating with the universities. They are coming to universities, having MOUs, and in case of ACCA, I have my personal experience when I was at Manipal, that from 2016 when in Chandigarh we first invited them, and from 2016 we have collaboration, and then we have collaborated, we have integrated our honors accounting with them, and due to that they have given us the 9 papers. So I request my C friend that now they also have with the through to the universities. They have to collaborate with the universities. And our association having a branch, having through our branches, having our links in all the universities can help them. They also work for the integrated courses. And with the integrated courses, the basic papers, they can leave upon the universities. They can give as a exemption to the good universities if the common course is there, and on the basis of that, then I think our chartered accountancy will be able to compete with all these international bodies. They are coming to India, flooding in southern part. My friends know that in Kerala and all this Karnataka, there are so many institutions giving the Christ University having more than 300-400 students for ACCA. So like that, I request if anybody chartered accountants member is there, they can collaborate with the university and Indian Accounting Association. Our all team will be helpful to them with the collaboration and all these things. And one more small suggestion that earlier when we were doing this course, then it was the flexible timing of the training. All the 6 hours can be flexible for the training, and now they have made it compulsory that 11 to 5 there will be no classes. So most of the students doing the chartered accountancies now they are deprived from attending the university courses. Either they are doing privately their cutting the classes and not attending the classes. So if they can made is flexible again, and it can be after 1 or 2, then the student can also attend the university courses. They can take their degree seriously as well as the chartered accountancy. I am thankful to the my chairman, secretary, and all the office bearers of the WIRC that there is a very good webinar, and all these lectures were very good, and it enhanced the knowledge of all the participants. And finally, I conclude with thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vaderaji, for giving a very insightful suggestion based on the research findings of the doctoral research and other important suggestions that you suggested to the ICAI. And I would like to thank you for organizing this wonderful event by WIRC Bombay, ICAI, and Indian Accounting Association. So I would like to thanks to Professor team of WIRC ICI Mumbai, specifically Manish Gadiaji and his entire team, and two speakers yesterday that has been from Institute of Chartered Accountant Abhishek Ji and Abhishek, and another speaker that is for GST. And today's we had a two speaker from Fatima Ji and Professor Shyam Sunder. So I would like to thanks on behalf of the organizer from ICAI and Indian Accounting Association. And I am very much thankful to Professor Soral Ji. He has taken a very good pain for organizing this webinar, and with the support of our entire office bearer, uh, our senior vice president Vadera ji, Jasraj Bohra ji, Arindam ji, Simon ji, Prakash ji, and Ashok ji. So on behalf of Indian Accounting Association, I am very much thankful for supporting this webinar, and obviously for this organizing this event, Mrs. Kapoor from ICI. She has been worked lot of, and today's and yesterday for technical support Misra ji, an entire team of ICI, entire team of IA, our past presidents, our executive committee members, our old branch secretary and members. For I am very much thankful for this organizing a very effective event. And I can say this is a first stepping stone with the association of ICI, and we will wish that our association will continue and we will go for a further, and that will be betterment of our country and for accounting profession. So thank you on behalf of the organizer. Thank you all, and obviously participants, those who have attended 2 days webinar. So thank you for them, and thanks to all. With these things, I would like to conclude this event. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are winding up the session now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Musa, Arindam ji. Yeah.